Calling the select board to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded by Lunenburg Public Access. The meeting will not be broadcast live, but will be uploaded to Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So new business, we have up first, considering the farmer's market permit application for Pony Shack Cider Inc. submitted by Nathan McKinley. And the dates for the farmer's markets are June 13th, July 11th, August 8th, September 12th, and September 27th. So Nate, I'll turn it over to you and just ask you to introduce yourself and just speak to your experience with this if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman, before you start,
I'm Nate McKinley, I'm the owner of Pony Shack Cider. The Lunenburg Farmers Market invited us to sell
Recording in progress.
our hard cider at this year's farmers market. So in order to legally do that, we need to obtain a farmer winery specific farmer market alcohol license from the local licensing board, which involves the select board. So as a company, we've been around for about 9 years. We've done various farmers markets over the years. We have a great experience with them. I think it's a nice little addition to farmers markets. It's really a great way for us to connect with customers and get our product out in a nice retail fashion. So all in all, our experience, it's been a real win for both us and for the communities that are hosting the farmers markets.
Great, all right, thank you, Nate. And I'll open it up to any questions from board members.
Everything's been submitted that needs to be submitted?
Everything's been submitted. This was actually my first one of these license types, so thank you, Nate. I got to learn a few things along the way, but everything is in order.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward once you've done it a couple of times, I'm guessing, but at first it can be kind of confusing, I presume.
I guess I have one question, because I think at St. Boniface, when they had their Oktoberfest, they had to have an area designated for drinking.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't?
No,
It's
this
different?
is
Okay.
different. So this is the primary purpose, as Nate, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but for a number of years, they allowed sampling of wines at farmers markets so that consumers could know what the product tasted like before they purchased it. And that's recently been expanded to allow brewers and cideries and distillers to do the same. So it's not, Nate, I don't think that you're doing any pouring other than really sampling for purchasing, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep,
So not selling your pours, in other words?
right,
Okay.
it's all for what we call off-premise consumption. So usually on-premise consumption sales would require a sort of like, boundaried area where the drinking takes place. People are just sort of sipping like an ounce or half an ounce to taste it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I think this is exciting.
Yeah, so am I. I'm looking forward to attending, and I'll make sure to stop by your booth as well. So,
Thank you.
all right, there.
Friday, 4 to 7.
I know. Yep. All right, there are no more questions. Is there a motion to approve the farmers market permit application for Pony Shack Cider for the farmers market on June 13th, July 11th, August 8th, September 12th, and September 27th?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Nate. We look forward to seeing you there.
Great, thank you very much. Really appreciate you having us, squeezing us into this.
Oh yeah, of course. Our pleasure. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
It wasn't really working well, so, and that should be it anyway. All right, so we can move on to FY26 goals workshop, select board and town manager goals. So there are quite a few documents in the drive. There's one guide to goal setting, and the TLDR version of that is to be realistic and not bite off more than you can chew. This other thing is the SMART methodology for setting goals, which I actually use at my job. So it's goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, which are just some considerations to keep in mind as we set goals. I think it's pretty straightforward, and I trust that we can all set goals. So are there any questions about the actual goal setting process right now, or we just want to jump right in? Okay, so normally we start by reviewing the previous fiscal year goals. We did not set any for the town manager because we had an interim, so we kind of just set select board goals, and it was all sort of combined for us and Carter within one document. This year I think it makes sense to split it out. So I do have a draft that has select board goals and town manager goals. It's in the same document, but they're split out. But they are pretty much aligned in what the town manager submitted and what I have down as just a draft for us to get the conversation started. But if you go in select board goals, and then on the bottom it should have FY25 goals, and this is last year's. So I do think we bit off a little more than we can chew last year. I do think we made progress, and the ones that we didn't, I think we certainly moved forward a little bit. But yeah, we can just go through these. So goal number 1 was establish policies in collaboration with the town manager and assistant town manager / HR director to improve the quality of the town as an employer, addressing the issues of recruitment, retention, and overall work environment by. And then objective 1 was create a schedule for the town manager and assistant town manager to conduct regular listening sessions and staff meetings. That did happen. That's how we got the feedback that ended up going into the SAP amendments that were at special town meeting. I don't know if we really need to continue doing that, so that's something that we can talk about as well. I think we're past the point where we really need to be involved in that sort of thing. Objective 2, implement an annual climate survey for regular feedback on job satisfaction, workplace environment, and communication with management. We did do that, so we passed the climate survey policy. It's not annual, I think it's every other year, and now the town manager has to implement it, which she has in her goals. Objective 3, create a town-wide employee recognition program to recognize and reward staff achievement and milestones through formal recognition programs and events to boost morale and encourage high performance. There's another thing that we started, and now this year the town manager is going to implement. Objective 4, encouraging professional development to...
I just want to jump in if I may,
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Chairman, on this one. So just for clarity, for the record, the way the town-wide recognition program was initially rolled out is for this first year, because it is in the SAP, it is not a town-wide recognition
That's true.
program. It is only for SAP employees. So,
Right, and we did have a conversation with that, which is why I didn't explicitly call it out, but it was before,
I just want to be,
it was
yeah.
before we had the new board, so yeah. It doesn't include the unions. Objective 4, encouraging professional development to support continuous learning and career growth through training programs, workshops, educational opportunities to facilitate staff development. This is a great goal. I don't think at this point it needs to be under a select board goal. I think this is a town manager one now. So I'm not sure if you had professional development in yours. I don't remember if I saw it.
So, would you like me to opine on each of these as we go?
We're all
or-
just sort of, this is an open discussion. Anyone can discuss any of these as we go through them.
So if I have to look at the hierarchy of needs for personnel, I think that while training programs, workshops, and educational opportunities are indeed important, they don't rate as high as some of the other hierarchy of needs for the personnel. And this specific action item, I think, is tied into my proposal for really addressing the orientation and onboarding of staff to tie in the professional development there. That's more for staff that is not functioning at perhaps the department head level. I believe that most, if not all, department heads really take care of a lot of their own professional development through their associations.
That's good to know.
But yeah, I think that for this one, it really ties into the more pressing need of developing an orientation and onboarding program that this could be incorporated up into.
Gotcha. All right, and then objective 5, organizing annual off-site employee events. I don't know if we actually did that last year.
No, and I
But
would have to say I disagree with this goal.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion.
We did,
About whether it should be
yeah.
offsite or onsite, or, as a staff member, it was more just, the opportunity to have events, to get together, whether it was, I thought maybe offsite was a lofty goal for a municipality, but I do think having events that employees can do that are fun, but it sounds like we've already done a
She
few
had, yeah.
things and, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I'm cognizant about when we do an employee event is the use of taxpayer funds in doing that. And
Right.
so that we do have some pretty specifics about how that looks and how that operates. So unfortunately, we cannot be like some other employers. We just can't compete in that space where we're going off for a fun day at the zoo perhaps, or using funds to go to a game at night, that with taxpayer funds.
Yeah, understood. All right.
But I think that we are trying to create a culture, and we need to continue, where there is more opportunities for folks to get together, whether that's on site or not, and to have a little levity once in a while learning some things and getting to know their colleagues.
Perfect, yeah, and I think that's progress, I consider it progress. All right, any other discussion on this first goal? Okay, so goal number 2, this does need to get carried over, at least I would recommend that we carry it over. Revamp the select board and town manager goal setting process. We did not get to this. So objective 1, establish a formal annual goal setting process by creating a structured timeline that aligns with the fiscal planning cycle to ensure timely and effective setting and reviewing of goals. Objective 2, gather input from department heads and town personnel, as well as elected and appointed town bodies to collect insights and feedback to inform the goal setting process. Objective 3, set measurable and transparent goals by implementing clear, quantifiable benchmarks for success, ensuring goals are transparent and progress can be regularly reviewed and communicated. And then objective 4, engage the public in goal setting by utilizing public forums, surveys, and digital platforms to involve community members in the goal setting process. So I like what we were trying to do here, right? We were trying to engage more people in the process by having a bottom-up way of getting feedback from staff, and also engaging other boards, committees, and the public as well. So I do think we should probably try this again this year and maybe consider revamping the way that we set goals. How do we feel about that?
Isn't objective 3 when it comes, wait, is it 3? No, it's 2. The department heads and town personnel, that
Mhm.
falls to the town manager, right? Like, we can get there through you.
So,
Yeah.
a couple of comments here. So the contract, my contract itself is quite specific in timing of goals and the timing that we do this. And so if we look at that timing, you're running up against some very other busy timelines on the select board's calendar. So that would be, the timing is right after the town meeting, and as you are doing your annual reappointments, it's just a busy time. I guess I would wonder, without seeing the results of that input, what the value is of doing the work to conduct a survey. I mean, you all are elected and you hear regularly from your constituents about what those factors are that are driving them. So I guess I wonder how much more value added would be gained from the effort of the process.
Mhm.
So much has changed since we talked about this
Yeah, I know.
last year. You know, like we're in a whole different environment than we were when we set this. So I think in my mind, because I think I had brought forward a lot of this stuff, was more the select board goals, less the town managers, because that's really not our control, but it's in your contract, you know. So my thought process in having the community involved, at least, you know, in the objective 4, was essentially hearing from the community what they want us to focus our attention on. You know, we've had a lot of complaints in the past about, you know, not involving the community or not, you know, being tone deaf or having things. So that was where my thought process was of, okay, this is our select board, what do you want us to focus on? You know, if our goals, we set these 3 goals, and the community's like, you're way off base, that's not what we want you to do, is sort of where the thought process was behind that. But again, the climate has really changed, I think, from where we were last year, so. I still don't think it's a bad thing to review the process or set the process. You know, I came on the board last year and I was like, I have no idea what this process is. I still don't really know what this process is, because last year our process, we didn't do what we normally would have done, we had an interim. So like, what are the timelines? They should be clear. I don't know. So, even if it's looking at, maybe we even have a policy, looking at the policy or reviewing whatever it is we say we're gonna do and doing it.
Mhm.
Doesn't need to be this huge, big, long evaluation process. I just think we need to outline what our process is.
Yeah, I
And
think
just putting the timeline
codifying,
down. Yeah.
codifying the process, I think, is a good effort. I just would be concerned with all that is on your plate for as we go into the next
Mhm.
section. How much more capacity you have for full public engagement around this topic, and I'm concerned about that. So the
Right.
policy setting, I think, is great.
Yeah, I think the objectives were a reflection of where we were at last year, and maybe we still need to have that policy, just to have it all written down, what the timeline is, but, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I don't see it as a goal. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of a guide of like, this is kind of where you want to go with your goals, is have the public feedback. I think we heard a lot in the spring town meeting, and I think even before. So I feel like it's more obvious maybe this year than maybe it has been in the past. But I feel like, for me as a teacher, we go through these goals processes all the time too, and setting goals and talking about administrative goals too. And I think when I look at it, it's the work that you want to get done. It's the work that the community wants you to get done too, but it's the work that you kind of planned already to do, and now you're putting it down to paper that these are the goals.
Right.
And it's the same thing, I reached out to the town manager to say like, kind of like, what is your thoughts on what you want to do this year? And I think it's probably going to be interconnected too. I think we're probably all going to be on the same page of what we want to get done.
Yeah, I agree, and in my draft, I did include this, but I think I put it as an objective under like some policy review. It's not like a standalone goal, and I
Which
do
makes
think
a lot
that,
of sense.
I think it sort of captures what we're sort of getting at here. So, all right. Goal number 3, increase transparency and availability of information to the public. Objective 1, ensure all public meetings are recorded for future reference regardless of whether or not those meetings are broadcast. Objective 2, maintain.
Can I pause on that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before we go. I still think we need more not enforcement, but oversight or pushing this out to all of our boards and committees, because this still isn't consistently happening.
Yeah.
It's a lot better,
Mhm.
but it's still not consistently happening.
Yeah, we do have more that are recorded and also broadcasted as well, but.
Can I ask a question on that?
Mhm.
So there are some boards that are making determinations that they no longer want to be in a hybrid environment, that they want in-person only. And some of those boards are very small, and their jurisdiction is somewhat limited. And so I wonder about indexing that to the available resources of the personnel who would then need to be here to record them.
I am completely against not recording meetings, personally.
We can record on Zoom even if they're in person.
So there's certain
If they're
boards
not
that don't
hybrid,
want to be hybrid,
Yeah,
Right, so they're always in person, you said, right?
in person.
So you can still run a Zoom meeting in
I
person
see.
and record it.
you could.
I see.
That's all, we don't need
Use the
Pax to come
Zoom
in.
to
Why not?
record,
Oh, we do it all the
Why?
time.
so PAC's not recording.
Yeah, it still gets uploaded. It's available.
I guess I would want to understand a little more about which boards are moving away from this and how much of an issue this would cause. Because I don't want to like really force this on people. I understand the value of it. I think it's worth looking into and maybe just seeing where we're at.
Like a survey of,
Yeah, just to see where we're at, because I don't want to cause issues with this, because I know, a lot of volunteers, they genuinely are
Yeah.
kind of camera shy and,
I'm
they
happy
just
to
want to.
have that conversation too, but I
Mhm.
still pretty firmly believe that, there's meetings, that
During the
happen
day.
midday, that if
Yeah.
they're not recorded, and then you have no access to them.
Right,
And I think it really limits it.
and a lot of
So,
people don't go
really
and
to have
check
a conversation
minutes.
and
Yeah.
see.
I think it's a valuable resource with a
Mhm.
very minimal lift.
And you could put in something in there, unless authorized by the board not to, in case there is some obscure small committee, instead of just making it a pure mandate.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wonder if that's more of a policy that we take on as policy and not so much as a goal.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably good. All right, well, we can think about this a little more over the course of the night, yeah. Objective 2, maintain up-to-date town data, financial reports, and project updates on the town website, allowing residents to track progress and understand town operations.
I think this is town manager.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yep.
But do we really, I mean, that should be, just be part of the job description. I don't think that's really a goal. That should be a given.
Well, I think it goes back to where we were at last year, right?
Yeah, so.
There were a lot of
yeah.
things that were very out of date.
Well, we heard last week, right, that the membership in terms of some of the members on committees
Yeah.
online is still.
And we did take a look at that last year. I don't know, maybe if it is still an issue.
Yeah, so I've already reached out to
Okay.
that person that gave that comment and let him know that when our executive assistant is
Yeah,
starting,
yeah.
that they'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
hear some of that.
I think we need a goal, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
I trust that some of these things are just gonna happen and
Right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
maybe rise to the occasion of being a
Yeah.
goal.
It was a unique year without a permanent town manager.
Yep.
Within a lot of flux, with a lot of issues, and I think we were trying to say, we hear you, we see you.
Yes.
We wanna work on these things, but we've made a lot of progress already on a lot of these things, even if it's not like, you know, a complete check mark next to this objective, we are moving toward that, so
Yep.
yeah, I'm still think we did a good thing, we had a lot of conversations, we're moving in the right direction.
I think Lunenburg has a lot of information available on its website. I think that we do a really good job of putting things out. I think that sometimes the particular platform in and of itself, which
Challenging.
they kind of have like a monopoly on
Yeah,
municipalities across the nation. Sometimes, especially depending on the device that you're using, it can be a challenge to find that information, that it's sometimes sub-layers of clicks. But in general, there's a lot of information, and I think that in a 2025 environment, we're always gonna be striving to put more on there, because the expectation of the public is each and every day that information becomes more readily available faster.
yeah.
Right. So I think it's just a reality of doing business in this time period.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so then objective 3, review policies regarding standards of public meeting agendas and minutes. We did not do this, but the objective here in minute, this is what you were. So we just wanted to standardize minutes across boards and committees, I think.
I think having a template that boards and committees could use for both their agendas and their minutes would be helpful for people coming on. I mean, a lot of these volunteers, they don't have clerks or to do it, and they don't know what they should do. You know, whether it's a policy or whether it's templates or what it is, but that was a lot of, thought out there.
Yeah, I would say when I first became clerk at the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee, it was like I didn't have a direction and I was just trying to figure it out, doing research online.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
talked about like a board and committee handbook at one point in time.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, so we could include this in a potential board committee handbook, like how to write minutes, or,
So I'm gonna say what I said before.
yeah,
I strongly caution the board
yeah.
about biting off more than you can chew
Mhm.
with a board committee handbook. I think that we need one, perhaps. I don't see that happening in FY '26 in reality, but I think a policy, I think starting with the bite of create a policy around recordings, agendas, minutes, and put that together is a step in the right direction.
Right. I agree. I mean, because you don't want to put something together that is not fully vetted or we don't have the time. We're still just reviewing our old goals. We haven't even talked about
I
any
know.
substance of our other things, so
Yeah.
it's a great goal to have. I'm not
Yeah.
saying we should set creating a handbook as a goal this year. I think it should be one of our goals to do,
Sure.
but that could be,
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of whittling down here as we move on to actually setting them, but we have to review them.
No, I think it's good to review it too, because then you see, okay, we still need to do this, still need to do this, okay, now what's the big priority? What are the top
Right.
2 or 3 priorities?
Right, and we haven't even gotten to what I think is really the big priority here. Okay.
What might that be?
I don't know, I couldn't.
Has a squiggly line with two straight lines through it.
Yeah. Objective 4, make select board meeting materials available online to provide advance access to the public. So this is, we've talked about this, right, the meeting packets.
This is another one of my, I'm gonna be like, this is mine.
Mhm.
But I still am a huge proponent of this. And if, I don't know what parts of Civic Plus we have, if we have the Agenda Center or not, if we actually have, because there's 2 versions. There's like the one that you can actually create the packets on there and it can get sent, it's worth doing the trial to see what you're what's in our package, but there is one that people can contribute, you can send it out to your different department heads, they can upload your relevant documents, and then it packages it all for you, and then it can get posted, whatever your timeline is online. I think it's important at some point to move to that. Again, priority,
It's definitely been a concern at the school committee level.
Yeah.
but having them online, a lot of times we're referencing these documents, or if you're in the room, or even if you're on Zoom or you're at home and you're watching it, you can't read what we're looking at.
So with the chair and I have spoken about this, having a repository of files that we are accessing during a meeting as a meeting packet is probably not a preferred method, because then it's not clear which documents were truly part of the meeting packet, and which documents were background information. So I do like transitioning to this is the meeting packet for June 9th, and we are very clear of what the meeting packet is. Once we are at that point of transition, then taking that document, and whether it's a PDF and we're just uploading a full PDF and people can look at the PDF in advance, or we're using a module, I think once we're at that point, this step becomes easy.
Yep.
And I think that it's reasonable at this point to say that we can be here by the end of, but sometime during this fiscal year. I do think that this would be reasonable.
Would you want to add that as a goal?
I mean,
Or do you want it just to happen without it being a goal? I don't feel strongly.
I think that's what happens, right? Like, things happen outside of goals.
Yeah,
but
we have
what
this
are the big
conversation every
things
year,
we want to
yeah.
get done, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say I think we maybe keep this one on our radar and we keep going,
Mhm.
because we can't have 10 goals with
No.
10 objectives
Yeah.
underneath each one.
I think you put it on your list, and when you get a short agenda, and you're like, hey, let's add this to the agenda because we got time.
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's really, there's not a lot of effort, quite frankly, of the select board. So
No,
to
it's
put
you.
this on a select board goal,
Right. It
there
have
would
to
be nothing that the select board would be doing
It's
to
gonna be-
advance this
It'll-
or to ensure that they're there, really. This is really coming from, again, having the
office.
staff in place, getting,
It's gonna be an action item, 6 months from now, where we're gonna check in and say, hey, are we at the point where we can now put these online? You're gonna say,
Right.
yes, we can, or I'll look at it again, or no, I'm not ready yet.
Mhm.
That's sort of
Yeah.
where I see this one going. It's not like we're gonna be putting
No.
packets online.
All right, I think we're on the same page here. I love this one. Objective 5, collaborate with PAC to create Lunenburg 101 informational sessions designed to educate residents about municipal operations, services, and how they can get involved in local government, improving civic engagement and understanding. We don't do this.
Yes, you did. We did a couple of them.
Yeah, there were a few.
We did one with the trash, you did one with,
Oh, sure.
And
Well,
then
those-
town
I-
meeting.
Okay, I see what you're
and
saying.
they actually did call them 101.
I didn't actually consider that. That was sort of
Top of
like
the town.
Carter's
So
top
they
of the
called them
town.
top of the town, so, but
Yeah.
then he was referring that as this.
Okay, but yeah, you're right. We did touch on a lot of these things. I think I remember specifically when we talked about this, we were sort of like, all right, well, what's a finance committee? What's a planning board to sort of like help people who are interested in volunteering? But yeah, we did talk about other things too. So I guess we did kind of do it.
Were the postings of the town manager's report, are those new too? I feel like those were new this
No,
year.
we started that last spring, I want to
Separating
say.
them out separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometime
So
last
I
year.
think we're
Pretty
still
new then.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, it is really good. Yeah. So.
That
So
was
we
a
don't-
full-on meeting,
Yeah.
right? Something
Right.
that people can do in a minute or two.
Yeah, that's
I
the
think the
week-to-week
goal-
update of municipal operations.
So the goal of this one was, again, to just try to get more information. It was also talking about volunteers, like you said.
Right.
I think we even talked about like, oh, if, PAC's looking to fill time, they could go to the different departments and say, oh, what is the, I don't know.
Right.
I can't think of a single department in my head. Fire
What do you
department,
do?
my brain just went,
Let's see.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not, again, not really in our goal as
No.
much as trying to help get it out and, but I think we did do some.
Yeah, and I think
that.
there's a common theme here, right? It's just like putting more information out and engaging a little more, and I do think that we're doing that, so. All right, we'll move on. Goal number 4, work through the town manager, assistant town manager, HR director, and the department heads to initially create, to periodically review, and to develop and secure plans, policies, and procedures to keep current the following. Objective 1, a complete and thorough organization chart of the entire town personnel, excluding schools, including defined areas for each department and any other subdivisions thereof. So we didn't do the org chart, and we talked about this, right? It's a nice to have, but it's not like a high priority of things to do.
Well, I think that, actually, this one, I think, comes into
Budget.
budget.
Yeah, sure,
It's on my list.
Yep, it comes into budget.
okay,
You need to see.
But I don't think it is a select board
Yeah.
action item.
no, it's not.
Right.
Again, this was
That's
that
gonna
weird year,
Right,
your notes
yeah.
were in there, thing- yeah.
Objective 2, a complete and thorough listing of each job title and each town employee and a full job description of each.
I
Kind of
mean,
the same
that-
thing, right?
That exists. So,
Does it though?
a job description for each employee.
An accepted job description for each employee?
Well, so anything that's been created since the personnel committee is disbanded is accepted by myself, right? So,
Well,
if,
before,
but
yeah.
if there were any that haven't been changed, I mean, didn't the I'm asking you because didn't the
No.
personnel committee, when was it Collins Center who came in?
No,
I'm a
okay.
consultant,
Yep.
when,
We had a consultant, they didn't like the work product,
Mm-hmm.
they started over again without the consultant. So there was some transition, and I would check with Julie on where it landed. There was some that I'm not sure if they were all accepted, if they were
Okay.
all approved, but that
Some
also
job
was just SAP. That was not clerical or other unions. So I do not believe we have townwide job descriptions. Townwide, not just SAP. Maybe we do, maybe things have changed.
With all the vacancies we've had, with
That-
maybe by default
Yeah,
we have
maybe
on
we
job
do now,
description.
maybe things have changed, but
Yeah.
we didn't, but the process that, the personnel committee was going originally involved some of the federal unions, and then that stopped because there was some friction, yep. So they were working just through SAP, and even then, I'm not sure that all of them exist. Could be wrong.
Okay. All right, objective 3, and this is, I think, something the town manager has under hers, but a comprehensive and concise set of standard operating procedures for each department consisting of their recurring processes, daily, monthly, quarterly operations, the personnel and resources involved in those processes, an escalation path for each. Never mind. So that's what you have is more on onboarding.
onboarding,
But
yes,
I
I
do
did.
think they're kind of related.
Well, listen,
Maybe.
I think that, I'm just gonna keep saying the same thing. So, to the viewers watching, I'm sorry for the repetitiveness. There are a lot of good ideas. There are a lot of things we can do. This is a big one. This alone would probably take departments the better part of a year without working on much else.
For my suggestion on something like this would be to say, even if we had, I'll put it as a policy, I don't know, we need to have 75,000 policies, but it's like a, hey, our goal over the next couple of years is to start looking at this, to get it on their radars of like, okay,
If we could break it down into more bite-sized pieces, we haven't gone into budget. When we get there, I'm very concerned about capacity.
this would fall so much below
So
where
I
that
just-
would fall in terms of
yeah.
prioritizing.
Oh, I just want to say the intent on this was onboarding, making sure that we effectively onboard, because we've onboarded staff without having SOPs and stuff in place.
We will not get the full SOPs for any department without, other than probably police and fire, that's very prescriptive. They have their manuals 3 inches thick, without substantial involvement of those department heads, which I think that this will take several years. So,
We talked a lot about this, you just took my brain here, is that how much institutional knowledge we lost over the
Yes.
last couple of years without having any written processes or no staff handoff. So like we lost our town accountant and our finance director, and then fortunately, Karen was willing to stay on and whatnot, but that's just an example of one particular employee. But if someone leaves and then that position is not filled and no one else is trained, there's no backup, that we're all one-man bands, and you come in and it's like, I'm still helping with things in my own role. Like, if we don't have anything written down anywhere, so it's just goals to move forward of like,
yes.
we need to start writing down how things are done, because as we continue to lose people, we don't know how things are done.
There's a difference between what we're saying and what we have written under this objective.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to clarify,
Agreed.
I wanted to clarify the intent.
Agreed.
And I'll just add one more thing to that list is, because it fits in the same topic, succession planning. So having something in place for the anticipation of, unanticipated departures, or even anticipated. We know we have one already.
Yeah, that's, again, department by
Yep,
department.
yep.
Some of it is gonna be succession planning is not happening within the organization, and the succession plan is that we post it and fill,
Yeah,
right?
but not always.
But not always.
Identifying the opportunities
For
for
advance.
growth and within, yeah.
Yeah, we
Yes.
talked a lot about growth, but that was the training that we had talked about. One of our other goals was, developing our employees to be able to take on and move up in the organization.
Mhm.
We talked a lot about that too.
It also does tie into the importance of an appropriate recruitment program, because if you recruit, an appropriate employee into a bad situation, they will identify that, and they will themselves create their own handbook or whatnot to assist the next person. So I really think it also ties into recruitment and why it's so important to hire good employees, because they will address these issues without the input. They're self-motivated, self-supervised, and it just, like I said, ties into recruitment and retention.
We have a common theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and a lot of it is, sure, it's still relevant, but it's not really for us as much anymore, which is great. All right, objective 4, a list of technological resources critical to staff performance and their cyclical maintenance schedule.
I don't know what this means.
Yeah.
That came out of all the news issues.
It came
Yeah.
out of,
Yeah.
it came out of identifying
Yeah.
what staff needed. I forget, I think we added this one.
Maybe even the Zoom.
There
issues.
was a lot of desire to have a complete catalog of all of our software, and that was pretty much it.
Just a listing of what
Well-
software, I mean, I don't,
It was very, we also had Google Drive, some people were using Google Drive, some people were on
I
SharePoint.
have to go back and remember, I don't even, I know a lot of this had to do with all of the news issues that we were
Yes, yeah.
dealing with
Mhm.
last year.
The newest maintenance.
I don't think this
Not
is
as
too.
many.
I also think,
365.
it came up with onboarding and offboarding staff with what you have access to after you leave, even as staff versus volunteers, that I think
Emails.
is where this might have came from.
Okay. Yeah, all right, maybe something last
It
year.
was so last year.
I think it was last year.
I think we can let that go. And then we can skip this little part here. All right, so that's last year's goals. I think we sort of identified some of the things that we can carry over as policies. If you go back to goals and objectives, we have a draft select board and town manager goals document. So we have a lot of examples as well. Some communities, there's a lot of variation what other communities do. You'll look, some of them are absolutely bare bones, and then you look at, I think it was Andover that has like a full-on presentation and like branding associated with their goals for the select board and the town manager. We're sort of somewhere in the middle, and I do like the format that we do, having like those high-level goals and breaking it down by objectives. I don't think that we need separate documents for the select board and the town manager. I think we can have it unified but separate, but that's also a point of discussion as well as we go through, so keep that in mind. So this is like a very rough draft, just to get the conversation going for the select board, and then for town manager, these are the town manager's proposed goals. So we'll go through all of it. So we can start with the select board, and just looking, ignore the objectives right now.
I'm sorry, which one are we on?
Oh, draft select board and town manager goals.
Do you, the first one?
What?
Can I see the first one for the financial policies? To give the
Um,
background?
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that. I just wanted to talk about the actual high-level goals and see if we are in alignment on that. Yeah. Did you open it?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay. So the first one, FY27 budget. Goal number 2, I have disposition of municipal properties, and goal number 3, review select board policies and procedures. What do we think about those high-level goals and the ordering of them?
The budget for sure is number 1.
I agree with that.
I narrowed it a little bit to focus on the process and timeline.
Okay.
The whole overall budget process and timeline, how we can improve that. Because I think what has worked against us forever is the timing. we need to start sooner, and we need to extend how long we can go before the warrant closes.
Mhm.
And so that, I mean, some of these I think are appropriate for the town manager, and some are, I think, appropriate for select board as far as objectives set and follow.
Okay, so breaking it down by your like objectives for goals for the budget?
Yeah, overall, all my objectives are primarily focused on the budget process and timeline.
Okay, good, we can definitely get into those.
Yeah, I would say pretty similar. I don't think it's strictly FY '27. I think that was the other
Okay.
thing. And then I had some other action specific. But I agree with Renee, timeline is definitely key, but I can read off the ones I had if we're interested.
Do we wanna maybe come
Just
up with
talk.
a language for the budget goal, and so it,
We
I
all
just
agree the
put-
budget is our first goal.
I think we do, yeah.
So then I think
Yeah, it
we
sounds like
maybe
it.
we
We just
focus
stick
on
with this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so instead of FY '27 budget, I just put that there. What do we want for the language for this goal to be?
Improve budget process and timeline, I don't know.
Prepare for FY '27.
Yeah, it's gotta be
um,
something specific.
Prepare for FY '27 budget and develop a multi-year financial forecast. And then
Well, I have that
if we
as
say,
objectives.
if we say multi-year, but in the title, because it's the multi-year, then you're a little flexible on the time.
Yeah, and that helps with like timeline and, you know.
Like, this should be the process that's followed. I mean, maybe, it should be improved, It probably won't be optimal, could be tweaked, but we should not go back to how we've done it before.
So prepare FY '27 budget and develop multi-year, 3-year?
No, I think that will be determined, right? So within a number of years, I think
Okay.
a multi-year,
Financial
a
forecasting.
sustainable financial plan or financial forecasting.
Yeah, the multi-year, that's what I'm trying to drive at. It's
Yeah.
not just FY '27,
Multi-year.
it's the financial
Yeah.
forecast.
Yeah,
I looked at what some of the other towns had for their high level, some had financial planning and stability, fiscal sustainability,
yeah, yeah.
So I just wrote down prepare FY '27 budget and develop multi-year financial forecast.
well, we're not preparing the budget.
Well, yeah,
That's why I'm focused on the budget process and timeline.
Develop a plan.
How does this tie into us taking over the role of the budget task force? Essentially, that is
I
this
think
goal.
it's just holding the meetings, because we're still not doing the budget. It's just a little more collaborative, and we're doing a lot more meetings up front and a lot more early. Otherwise,
That's one of the
nothing
action
really
items.
changes.
Like my first action item was collaborate with the town department heads,
Yep.
the boards, committees to identify current services, current service levels, unmet needs and priorities across all functions.
But again,
So instead of the
that's
word,
not select board's
No.
job.
so instead of the
But to
word
collaborate.
prepare,
Beyond the tri-board that has been proposed, like, okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, so some select board committees participate in these tri-board meetings. One, to address some timing, was for the select board to propose a change to our bylaw, fall town meeting, to switch to the postcard instead of mailing the books. Make books, physical, big town warrant book available. People can come pick it up, we can, deliver it to them, mail it to them, whatever, but get the postcards out so it's available online. So that extends, right, that should extend how long
It's 3 weeks.
we can wait, because right now, the printing, like, cuts off, what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's
And it
like
goes
2
for
to
that
3
choice.
weeks.
Do we have to do
It
that?
is,
Thanks,
that
that's
is, I mean, so
very
many
expensive.
people,
There
how
are a
many
lot of
comments have I seen on
opportunities.
Facebook? What's on the warrant? I mean, you got it mailed to your house, what more can we do?
alright.
So I don't wanna waste the paper, the money, and the time.
Yeah. Alright, I'm still on the high level goal here, the language of it.
But that's the process and that's what I'm talking about, not making the budget itself, but
Right,
the process, having this tri-board committee, having the timeline, asking town manager to have department heads ready to present their draft budget earlier to the tri-board.
That would be part of our goal, definitely.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's how, is
Education,
reviewing the budget process and developing a multi-year financial forecast? Or
Well,
we're
we
not
can-
developing it?
We're not,
developing it.
no.
We're reviewing the process and
You're
facilitating.
participating in the process, you're collaborating with
Advising.
other boards, you're
Right.
advising.
So I think we should capture what we're actually doing this year, which is collaborating with staff the finance committee, the school committee, to hold tri-board meetings in order to prepare, but I guess that's a triggering word, the FY '27 budget.
In order to prepare, no, that's fair,
Yeah,
that's fair.
But what is the overlay?
It's not saying you're preparing,
right,
you're collaborating in order for the preparation to occur.
right. So do we like that? And develop multi-year financial forecast. We can also add something in
I think the
about reviewing-
multi-year financial forecast is a sub-bullet, is a part of that budget process.
And I think an action item I had was to develop scenarios for potential overrides,
Well, yeah,
including
I got
tiered
that too.
options
We'll get there.
and
once we
detailed
get to
service
it.
impacts.
All right, so hold on. So collaborate with town and school staff, finance committee.
You can only control what you can control,
Sure.
so you cannot collaborate necessarily with school staff.
Okay.
or- Right,
Yeah.
but with the
I
school.
mean, can we recommend the approval of this tri-board committee to work
Well, but he's
collaboratively
still-
during?
Collaborate with staff, finance committee, school committee in the preparation
And other stakeholders?
and other stakeholders.
I think the high level goal is getting too long. I think we gotta be really just, and then with the objectives be
Well, I think,
specific.
yeah.
Those are the things we're ticking off by the objectives, right?
I think the objective was just the budget, but then you get your action items, this is like your.
Well,
Yeah.
going by this structure, it's goal
I
and
guess your goal and
objectives, yeah.
objectives, yeah.
Okay.
The objectives are the deliverables.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the budget-related objectives then. So the first one is review
Well-
and assist.
Sorry, but I think that goal still reads like an objective, because you have the
Okay.
finance committee.
And that's
school
why I
committee.
just
What do you
put
have for
budget.
goal right now?
Collaborate with staff, finance committee.
Yeah, I think that's your
Okay, all right, so we can
low
drop that
level
down.
objective,
And
yeah.
we already have that, well, I do actually have that, it's objective two. This is why I just put budget.
Prepare for FY '27.
Strategic
Do
budget.
you guys
And
not like the
planning.
budget process, improved budget, town operating budget process and timeline?
Improve,
Do you not like that?
town budget.
Because we're focused on operating budget, not capital for this,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I think it just sounds smaller than what you're doing.
Strategic
Well,
review
then
of
the
budget
objectives,
process.
the objectives spell it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Strategic review.
I don't
It
want,
might
I don't
be
want a
for a town, right?
deliverable to be, like, I want to call out specific deliverables. That's my preference.
Yeah, but we can't even get past line one, guys.
So
Yeah.
prepare
The
for
goal,
FY
you just say budget
'27,
Even too, to start, and we can,
prepare for FY '27 budget and improve town budget creation timeline and process. Is that capturing what everyone's trying to say here? We're very close to me just saying, I'm just gonna put
Yeah,
down
we can
budget.
come back to it,
I think
yeah.
that's
We can
right,
come
yeah,
back to
I
it,
was
too.
hearing the basic on that.
Okay.
I think we can come back to that, we have all the objectives too.
All right, so objective one, review and assist in the finalizing of the draft financial policies, and I'll have the town manager explain this one.
Okay, so thank you. So the town did receive a community compact financial best practices grant, in which the Division of Local Services partnered with the town to provide those services under the grant to develop a robust new financial policies document. That was completed right around the time of the departure of the last permanent town manager. And so those it's pretty thick, it's about half an inch thick. Those policies need to be reviewed first, in my opinion, by the finance committee, and then ultimately adopted by the select board. We have to finish up this project so that we can fully close out this grant and have our deliverable finalized. But in addition, I think that when I was reviewing those, there are some things in there that while they might be absolute best practices, they didn't give any leeway for changing circumstances on the ground as we're experiencing them, and especially around the treatment and use of free cash that I think that folks would definitely want to consider. So it's gonna be, I would say that this task itself is probably several months of FinCom reviewing and then several months of the select board reviewing. And does it, I don't know if it makes sense to collaborate or not, but
Is there a deadline for when that needs to be completed?
that deadline's probably passed.
But it's still,
So
there's, Is there any repercussions from the deadline having been passed?
I don't know if an audit would, from the state on their grants, would result in something, but this needed to be finalized with that grant closeout process that happened some time ago. And so I'm assuming that the state believes that these were adopted.
So we have to do that.
And if we change something that's in the draft?
That's fine.
Yes, we just
That's
have to
fine.
review
You don't
it
have
and
to
adopt
follow,
it.
you don't have to
Okay,
follow what
okay.
they said. They just,
We
So-
can't go back to them for another.
no, the only reason that the state was involved in actually drafting them is because I think that they were, rather, when they gave us the funds under the best practices grant program, rather than having us hire a third-party consultant, they said, hey, we have these folks who work for the state who already do this work, so we'll give you the funding, but you're using DLS. I don't think DLS is concerned if we change how we proportion out our free cash.
So we have to do it. I wanted it to be a goal
Yep.
I
last
kind of
year.
see that we're gonna do it. I don't know if I'd throw it out as objective one.
So that's,
Just pop it down at the end of the list.
we can do that, that's fine. It doesn't have to be objective one, but I think it really needs to be an objective.
Yeah, I think when people are gonna, the public's gonna read our objectives and be like, why is that? Like, yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's
I
fair.
think it's,
I'm okay with that. All right, it's gotta be there. So
Yeah,
let's just,
I think as long as we're not, as long as we understand that this has to happen early in the year. Like,
Yeah.
we can't, if it's objectives
Mhm.
4, I don't wanna be like locked into going in order, because obviously we
No,
know
no.
in importance, reviewing the budget is the most
Mhm.
important, but this also, time-wise, it sounds like needs to happen yesterday.
and
I
I
don't
do,
mind putting it at the bottom in terms of, but like,
Would it help to put it into a goal that involves policy creation and review?
It
Pull
is,
it, pull it out from the budget
Yeah.
goal.
I like that
it's
too.
policy.
I like that.
Pull it
Okay.
out
Make
from
it
the budget.
first.
Potentially.
Because it
And
sounds
then
like
make
we're
it
gonna
number
have a few, whether it's reviewing policies or creating policies.
all right, so I'm gonna drop it down to goal number 3. We have review select board policies and procedures, and we'll have it as objective 1. All right,
Great.
so
like it.
now, the new objective 1 for the budget, at least that we have in this draft. Collaborate with staff, finance committee, and school committee to formalize a comprehensive budget plan for FY '27, including the potential of town and school Proposition 2.5 overrides, which shall be tiered by level of necessity determined by select board and town manager. It's just a draft, but how do we feel about that?
My only comment
Okay.
is that, we're deciding now that it's going to be tiered. I don't know
Yeah.
that might,
Sure,
which may be tiered.
Yeah.
which may be tiered. Yeah, we
You
can
gotta
change that
definitely leave
language.
everything open, yeah.
All on the, leave everything on the table.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No, thank you. Other than that, do we want to change this one at all? So this is our objective 1.
Do you want to specifically call out that it's through the tri-board?
I was just gonna say,
I know,
I think
that's-
we should have, I was just looking at, which other one, I was looking at another town.
To formalize a comprehensive budget plan through tri-board meetings.
Yeah, somebody, I think it was Andover that had the slides with like a gazillion goals.
Yes, it was. Okay, I
Review-
just added it.
Where, no,
But I think it should almost be a separate one.
no, maybe.
Yeah, you can have separate.
I think it should say, like, the
objectives.
first one, where was that first one? I was just.
Oh, here it is, I think it's Goddard actually.
Yeah, I think the first objective is really just the collaborating with the committees.
It's a
I think
process
the
that we're gonna
Proposition
follow.
2.5, I think it'd be a separate objective.
Okay, I mean, I see them as very intertwined.
I think they're intertwined, but I was
Yeah.
just thinking, so it was this one, I don't know what town this is, doesn't say.
What's that?
Support tri-board efficiency meetings and any recommendations from those meetings. Like, they have it like as a separate item. I think calling, I wouldn't, I mean, this doesn't really matter, but I like the idea of keeping the objectives shorter.
Yeah, I think that's
also really
fair.
like checking things off lists. So I feel like if we have, okay, we're gonna set up these tri-board meetings, we're gonna do it like, we can accomplish that.
Okay, so objective 1 is
That's
just
just-
the tri-board meeting, so I'm gonna add a
First.
period here. So objective 1 is collaborate with staff, finance committee, and school committee to formalize a comprehensive budget plan through regularly scheduled tri-board meetings, period. And now for objective 2. Let's
So-
see.
Maybe before even that, objective 2, I think we really need to look at the staffing, the compensation, service levels against comparable communities, assess competitiveness gaps, where are these numbers coming from that potentially could get us to an override need?
But this is, those are departments.
Yeah, that's.
This- that's
It's gonna come out in the
departments.
tri-board meetings, right? We're gonna have
So,
We're not doing it either.
Or it's from
so-
the department heads.
It's
Right.
it's coming from
Yeah.
them, yeah.
But
Let
we
me run
gotta-
this
But part of it's coming from them. So part of your statement is coming from them, which is the analysis of needs and future growth. The analysis of competitiveness, at this moment in time, we do not have funding to engage in that area. So that may be something that comes up at the fall special to get funding targeted for that in a special article, but those are not necessarily inexpensive to do,
Mhm.
like 20 grand.
To
Just
do the analysis?
to do the compensation classification study and a
Mhm.
market analysis.
Mhm.
And there was several attempts made
Right.
in the community.
several expensive attempts.
That ended up in the blue file, the recycling bin, because after hiring the consultant, there wasn't consensus around specifically I think around the classifications more than the compensations. It fell apart in the classifications.
Didn't really get to compensate.
The staff has expressed that they desire for this to be done by a third party. They do want the professional compensation classification plan done, and they are expensive, they take a while. I would hope that if we can get funding, we could get that done by May, but it is contingent upon.
May.
Oh,
'Cause I feel like that should be a part of this process. I feel like if we're gonna be
A
looking
class
to get
comp
our
plan is-
employees.
It's a big,
It's also a multi-year
yeah,
process.
it's a big, I think even by May, if we started it in the fall, let me give an example. I did get funding for a class comp plan in my last community. I engaged with Collins Center, UMass Boston Collins Center, who does work in this area. When they signed the contract, it was a year out before they could engage. So I signed a contract a year out, knowing, because they had too many clients, because they take a long time to do.
Concord
Yeah,
just
see,
did-
my thought was doing the analysis of like, what positions do we still need to fill? Do we need additional staff here or here? What's the compensation for
That's
that
the
position?
department heads, right?
But I think that's a little
That's
different than
easier.
doing.
Yeah.
That's
a
easy.
full- Doing a full compensation review, I feel like is different than looking at our organization. I feel like
And
that
that could be
ties,
something in the future.
yeah, I
And
think
I don't
that
think-
ties more into our other org chart that we talked about needing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need, can we put the org chart in here?
Well, I think of like fire.
Well-
Like fire says they need more staff. Okay, how many more? What's the dollar amount?
And this was one of the ones that we talked about potentially bringing forward. I
Right.
forget how we had it worded before, but reviewing the organization as a whole
Mhm.
and identifying gaps or things.
I think for
I think that is
fire,
important.
so kind of jumping ahead a little bit in what might the tri-boards look like. I would imagine we have not had a meeting, so the conversation about the tri-board meetings came out publicly a little bit prematurely because we have not had the meetings with the chairs of the other committees to see where they're at. That said, very early in that process, we have a specific presentation on the fourth shift for fire. So that specific one, we know how much it's costs. We know how many you put on one shift, we know how many people that is. So that is discrete enough that it's tangible.
So I guess
Yeah,
I kind of connect it, then maybe it's subjective to something like having at a select board meeting, different department heads.
So that's
Before
the
the,
That's what
You know,
I
the
see
March
as being
meetings.
implicitly included by the regularly scheduled tri-board
Yeah.
meetings,
does it make
because
sense for me to share? Just what my draft outline is for the
Yeah,
tri-board
we
at
can
this
go over
point?
it.
I mean, just so,
so you want the department heads at the tri-board meetings,
Yes.
not necessarily at the select board meetings?
It's
Well-
not on the agenda.
well, it's a part of the
Goal set.
goal, I mean, it's part of we're talking about how we're gonna get to FY '27, and this is.
Because I don't know if that's, I feel like the public is going to know, like the department heads are gonna be included in it. If we're just saying tri-board meetings, I don't think
Oh,
that's
It is,
stating that.
it is-
department
the
heads.
tri-board meetings will include presentations from all the departments.
So wait, you're
Then I
developing a
think we
plan
need
for
to
the
include that in
department?
the objective.
so I have a calendar
Yeah,
that
We
we
just
developed that it's not been shared yet because it got shared with the school committee apparently, but it hasn't been shared yet with we haven't had the discussion with
It's a
the
draft.
chairs.
Select board.
Or this, so we haven't shared it with the chairs to have our internal discussion of what this looks like, but
Yeah.
what it contemplates is a backwards calendar from January. essentially. So by January, that we wouldn't have a balanced budget by January because you don't know all your revenue figures and you don't know what is unknown that might be coming in spring. But by that point, we would have had the vetting of additional, whatever staff needs there are, new staff needs, and what that looks like, which of those, if any, are in FY27. We would have had each department having come and present their budgets, their early versions of their budgets to the tri-boards. We would have had the tri-boards early on engaging in which areas they would like to see at least discussion about consolidations and inefficiencies and whether or not that makes sense for this fiscal year or future fiscal year, so we can say, yes, we are looking at X, but X is not possible until, it's gonna take us several years to get to X, and here's the plan for that consolidation. And then essentially in December, by the time we get to December, and the state has their consensus revenue hearing, we start to hear what the state is starting to say about revenue that gives us an insight of what does each one look like for the state budget. And then it's a lot more work for the department heads in the fall, but it's shifting their time of work so that they'll just hopefully have to make adjustments and tweaks, and they'll be pretty much ready by the time their normal presentations would occur in February and March to the FinCom. So it doesn't eliminate those presentations to FinCom.
So would the objective be to have department heads present their initial preliminary budget to the tri-board by
So what I'm gonna do for
December.
this
Yes.
But I think
objective,
we need more than just preliminary budgets, right? We need
And a 3-year.
yep,
in
it'll,
tiers, like of, okay, this is needs, wants, long-term projections.
Well, I think that gets to the content of the presentation. So
yeah,
one thing that, like, org charts keep coming up, right? One thing I had on my to-do list, I just would scribble things down since budget task force ended. Things to see, and then FinCom has brought up wanting to standardize the presentation, the material that's covered. It includes org chart of today, projected. It includes past 3-year actuals and the current fiscal year and projecting 3 years out for expenses and staffing. So those types of details, we don't have any kind of standardized format for presenting any type of budget, preliminary or final.
That's something that we could set a policy for.
Yeah,
So this
it's
is
like-
something-
especially with finance too, with presentations, like what's a 3% budget look like versus what's the needs-based budget?
Yeah.
And the school committee does the same thing. It's concerning that there's lots of different budgets we could be looking at.
I will say, I don't think that I've seen any department that is putting a want. I just don't see want budgets.
No.
I think it's
But I
actually
think
quite the opposite. I think,
Consistency across the
absolutely.
So this is a
presentations, for me,
proposed
that's kind of.
town manager goal.
Yeah.
So we'll, that's on the town manager's list. I don't think it's really our role to do that, right? I think that's the town
We
manager.
hear those presentations and see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a policy that we would set, that would just be.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't think it would need to be. I think the town manager can.
Because it's really the standardization of the presentation is really to FinCom.
And it's working with department heads to
And
create
so, but
that.
that said, it is 100% on my list
Yeah.
that we standardize this. So I don't want that to sound like that.
Yeah, no.
So
I don't want to sound like a
There's
a lot of-
resistance.
I feel there's a lot of gray area.
It's
in
on
terms of
there.
like,
And I-
what are we supposed to do, you know?
we're covering a lot of the things that are gonna come up under the town manager's
Yes.
part of it because we're just talking about budget right now. So
Just finish it, sticks with us.
let's,
Also, for clarity, I think I'm cautious about using the word tri-board too, that like, what's the tri-board? This is kind of a new language for the public.
Oh, define it once.
Yeah,
it's
it's
fine.
an
I would
objective,
want
is
to
to
define
create
it
a
as
tri-board.
objective. Yeah, oh, yeah, maybe that's where we define
That's
it.
objective 1, create a tri-board to meet on a regular basis.
Consisting of
Yeah,
the finance committee, the
Right.
school committee, and select board.
so,
yeah.
hold on. Objective 1, we have collaborate with staff, finance committee, and school committee, and other stakeholders to formalize a comprehensive budget plan through regularly scheduled tri-board meetings, so that I can put in parentheses here. including select board.
Yeah, just under, next
Consisting
to,
of,
yeah.
Okay, we can explicitly call that out, select board, finance committee, and school committee. And then 2, did we wanna include anything about hearing presentations from department heads? Do we wanna include any other language in this objective, or just, do we wanna just leave it there?
My opinion is it comes through the tri-board meetings itself,
I
the
agree,
agendas
too.
of the tri-board.
Yeah, that was my understanding here. But I can understand it's, it's a little implicit, but.
I think we have to have a mutual agreement. I think there are some joint goals, that we have a mutual agreement that the department head presentations will be completed by December.
Fair enough.
So do we
Whether that's
wanna-
on your list,
That's
our list,
definitely-
our joint
Yeah,
list.
exactly, you can always
Yeah.
come
I mean,
up
we're
with the town
splitting
manager's list and that.
hairs, I think,
Exactly.
sometimes,
Yeah.
but
We are,
I think we have to call out a time. We have to be,
Specific
Yeah.
that it's December.
because time has been
Yeah.
against us.
And maybe we stick with goal
Forever.
1 and hit both ends. the
I was
town
just gonna
manager and
say, I
select
think
board
make
before we
that
move on.
makes sense.
right, that's a
Versus
town,
going to
I think the deadline's a town
Town
manager
managers.
thing, so.
Can we, before we keep, can we
Mhm.
review the town manager ones before we keep going, and then we can kind of just make sure we're capturing every, just the budget one?
He said,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just stick
Well,
with budget
budget,
on
yeah.
goal.
Right,
Yeah.
so we're
I was
talking about budget.
can you
so
pull
Select
up
board.
2 drafts of this so can we work on 2 docs?
Anyone can do,
Oh,
yeah. you
yeah, okay,
can Feel free
okay.
to scroll down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
No,
on
no,
the
no,
bottom,
I'm
right?
just saying, can we
No.
be working on 2 docs at once? Can we be collaborating?
Everybody can be
Yeah.
working on this at the same time. Are you trying to say save a copy so that we have this one versus?
No,
this
she
one?
wants to open the other document.
And be
Oh, yeah,
working
there's another
together at the same
document.
time?
It's in the same
Separate
document, so scroll
Yeah,
down.
it's town manager's goals, yeah. It's on the second
Split your
page.
screen and show both documents at once.
That's what.
But it's one document.
But my
It
laptop's
is.
too small. You
All right,
can make
all right,
it-
guys, come on.
I'm just gonna create a copy.
So under the town managers, we have objective 1, develop a FY '27 budget and 3-year financial
So I would
forecast.
say multi-year,
Agreed.
Okay,
might not be 3.
Might be 5,
Minimum 3.
Yeah, we could.
Minimum 3.
And
but
develop
minimum 3, minimum
Yeah.
a multi-year,
financial forecast.
We can say
minimum of 3
3
years.
plus. 3 plus.
Minimum of 3 years financial forecast. And then underneath, we have some bullet points, so shift initial budget preparations to summer/fall. Work
Do
with,
we want to go specifically for that year? Or is this every year?
I think this is.
this is under develop FY
Oh,
'27
yeah,
budget.
27, okay.
And it's also,
I mean, in theory, I think we should be shifting this process
That's policy.
every
We can
year.
do that by policy.
well, we're setting goals for this financial year, right? Let's try it, and if we wanna do it again, we can.
Yeah, I think that this is, some people, and when I was talking about this in department head meetings, so I don't wanna be remiss to not say this, is that there was a question from some, a minority, saying, is this another exercise in futility? Are we just gonna do all of this work for nothing? And I'm trying to say, no, it's not extra work first, it's a shifting of timelines.
Yeah.
It's a preparation of things, and I think that said, though, to be fair, none of us in this room has ever participated in a tri-board meeting of a select board, school committee, and finance committee. None of us have a magic 8 ball to say what is actually gonna happen with revenues or FY '27. So I think we do need to acknowledge that it's a bit of an experiment and that we might need to adjust and pivot and be somewhat flexible, because we may start with a tri-board meeting and all of a sudden it's a
Quad board.
quad board meeting,
We're
right?
pulling capital planning
Right,
meetings.
you never, so I
That's
just wanna
Or that a group
keep a
doesn't want
nimbleness and
to
acknowledge
participate
that we
anymore.
don't know. We don't know what's gonna happen.
Best
Yeah, I could
faith
see
ever.
people getting overwhelmed with their schedule and it just shifts to the chairs.
Right.
And you could happen. So,
But that's still, I mean, they're still being included, right?
Yes.
So I think that's, that's still being hit on, so. All right, work with department heads to identify areas where growth is needed, level funding is sufficient, and reductions can be made. Actively participate in the tri-board meetings of the select board, finance committee, and school committee. By January of 2026, present on FY '27 budget status and general plan, if any, as discussed by the tri-board. Hold at least 2 in-person forums, I really like this one, on the budget in advance of town meeting. As part of this process, develop 5-year staffing plans for all town departments.
Those are lofty goals.
So
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, by January 26th, present on FY '27 budget to who?
I was envisioning this as a presentation to the select board, as that has the widest audience, I think, at that time, of just, it's really, but to the select board, through the select board to the public.
Yeah.
That
Or-
this is where we're at.
Are you thinking of this as what we've done in the past is the town manager's preliminary budget presentation to FinCom?
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that
It's
is,
usually later.
that's baked into the bylaw itself, and I believe that is prescriptive in the bylaw, that town manager's presentation to FinCom still occurs mid-February.
Okay.
So that's in addition to,
Give the presentation again at the finance.
and it might change, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you
Yeah.
need to do both.
I think the
They're
goal
that
here
close
was
together?
getting it earlier.
And getting it, I think that it's to kind of give, okay,
More for the public's benefit than anything.
Yeah, because hopefully, in theory, the tri-board will be working together, so we'll have more information and we'll be working collaboratively. So that's just the initial's not the right word, but initial, I guess, full presentation to the public through us.
So I had something similar, but a little bit more detailed. I had develop and disseminate public-facing materials, including presentations, budget dashboards, videos, to educate residents on financial state of the town, promote informed participation in community decision-making.
I think she's got that captured.
well, I don't have.
Not the videos,
No, I
but-
don't have a video and I don't have
Because I
the
remember the video that
software.
you had talked about potentially for
Yeah.
a town meeting, I was like,
I don't have the software for, so that's like the Andover that you saw.
Right.
I don't have that software.
But we have at least 2 in-person forums, and that alone is incredible in my opinion. So-
Those would get filmed.
but like,
I
okay,
know.
yeah, exactly, so
Those
it's
would get
filmed,
filmed.
packed, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
so I think that would be good.
And the in-person forums would include FinCom?
However,
This,
Yeah,
anyone,
no,
open to the
yeah.
public, this is the
No,
town
to
manager.
present,
No, I-
because I had in mind for FinCom to recommend that they do some public education on overrides, Prop 2.5, debt exclusion, just general municipal finance. Tax limits, all that.
I've experienced where finance can be very influential and assistive because they really present a neutral view of just the facts, ma'am, on this is what the levy is, this is, so,
We do
That
have those
foundational
hold
knowledge
on.
that people need
Please.
to understand.
We do have those already. Evan Waters, the previous chair of the finance committee, created those, and we have given them 2 years in a row, I know, and Chris has also brought them up, so those are available already. And we
On
can definitely do it.
FinCom meetings.
Yeah.
oh, but is it a formal presentation that's like just, this is a presentation on the levy limit that's on PAC?
Unpack somewhere? No,
That's,
but we
that's,
could do
It's,
that.
you could trim that.
We
FinCom
have the
meeting,
materials
maybe.
that
Trim
would
it.
be available.
It's
So-
embedded in a FinCom meeting.
Didn't he make a presentation though, like you were saying?
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
he
yeah.
made like a slideshow and like a whole,
Mhm.
like a PowerPoint.
And it gets made during the finance committee meetings every now and then, so. All right.
But having a live setting may be helpful, public interaction.
All right, let's continue. Objective 2, explore town/school operational and budgetary collaboration and efficiencies, including consolidation of departments, joint purchasing, and consolidation of vendors, multi-year timeline with initial year determining which areas are feasible/reasonable. Objective 3, revise the operating and capital budget submission forms and presentations to provide consistency across departments and transparency to the public. Will begin to be used throughout the FY26 budgeting
that should
process.
say 27.
In Objective 4, work with the Finance Committee, Select Board, staff, and other stakeholders to complete the review of and modify all necessary the draft financial policies. Goal of adoption by the Select Board prior to the 2026 annual town meeting. All right, so those are all the town manager's budget goals. Do we want to jump back up to ours now? All right, so let's scroll back up.
Go back to that.
So we have Objective 1, which is holding the tri-board meetings, and Objective 2, which we split out, which was specific to any potential Prop 2.5 overrides, which may be tiered by level of necessity determined by Select Board and Town Manager. So I'll say Objective 2, prepare and present for FY '27 the potential of town and school Prop 2.5 overrides. Is that all right?
I think at the point we're presenting, and I think that is a select board role,
Yeah.
yes, to be, if there is consensus around a direction, that the various leadership entities present on that.
I mean, I would like to try, if it's possible, try to convey that we try to avoid an override, you know, as opposed to, not that this makes it sound inevitable, but I think it's
Right.
important that we send a message that we're, personally, I think, trying to avoid an override.
Right.
I don't really want to, personally, for my opinion on that one is, I don't want to say we should avoid it or we should do it. I want to evaluate it and try to
Sure.
come in
Yeah.
terms of like a,
Yeah, I guess
we
my
don't
point.
know which way. I think that's what I just cut you off, sorry.
No, I agree, and I think that's kind of how I started. I just didn't want it to sound as though it was a, you know, foregone.
given.
Right.
Yeah.
To your point, of course, it may very well be the, you know, the opinion of the tri-board that's the only way forward, but I think it's, you know.
You want to turn over every rock before
Yeah,
you get there.
exactly. Like that's a last case scenario, like that's, if they come with that as a proposal, it just should be known that that's the last stone.
Right. No, I agree. I think that's fair. All right. Are there any other objectives we want to add for
Wait,
select board?
were we good with
Let's,
how
yeah,
the wording
we
on
gotta
that one? I
tweak the
don't feel like we
language
were
on
done
this
with
one,
that
yeah.
one.
Well, what do we want to tweak?
Trying to find the right language, yeah.
We could analyze the necessity.
Well, analyze the needs under the current budget structure, you know, like.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's about it.
Can we, I don't want to speak for other boards, but can we say the outcome of the tri-board is to come forward with a recommendation, whether it's a Prop 2.5 override or not?
That's the mission of the tri-board.
Assess the work of the tri-board, or not
Yeah.
the work, but assess the
Assess the results
results of the
of
tri-board.
the tri-board meetings.
Are you
And
assessing?
determine.
Are you assessing them? Or is there I'm just wondering, is there a possibility that the select board moves in a different direction than the tri-board? Because if not,
If we could, yeah.
well,
It would not be advisable.
We could, we can do whatever we
It's
want.
possible,
okay.
but, so these tri-board meetings only go through the end of the calendar year?
January.
Okay.
So we could say assess the result of the tri-board meetings to determine the necessity.
Or if the current funding structure supports such initiatives, like, is it necessary, and this is a question, is it necessary to even use the phrase 2.5 override? I think everybody knows that if the town doesn't have the funding capacity, that's the next step, but, so that's
Yeah.
really a question.
I get what you're saying. I also don't want to step around it because we really need to figure out whether or not we're
I
going to do
think
it
we
this
should
year.
at least say, including reviewing the potential of, or something like that.
It seems to me that there needs to be perhaps an objective between 1 and 2, and make 2, 3, where, so objective 2 perhaps is an evaluation of the information, and I'm not putting this in like
You're making
language,
up,
but evaluation of the information and analysis of that information to determine what is the plan of the select board as we approach that. So based on everything that you've gleaned from the tri-boards, that you are coalescing around a plan that's, and that evaluates all options, including perhaps budget cuts or
Exactly.
service level cuts. So that is number 2. And then perhaps whatever the plan is, that now becomes number 3, where you're disseminating that.
Yeah, I think budget cuts needs to be included in this if we're including the 2.5 override. I think it's
Evaluation of.
the evaluation, including, but not limited to,
Sorry,
budget cuts
yeah.
and 2.5% overrides.
Okay. All right, so let's spit out some language for objective 2 here.
Do we as a select board want to bring forward a recommendation? Or do we do it as a tri-board?
I almost think both.
Just set up first.
If the tri-board has a recommendation, and if they don't, we're still gonna have to make our recommendation.
Whether we say we're aligned with it or.
Exactly, right, we may or may not align.
So that's
And
why I
you
think we
the
should
tri-board
still,
should come up with a recommendation as well.
for us,
They
for
might not.
the language of our goals, we should still say, assess the results of the tri-board meeting.
Yes.
Um, So what is the language that we want here about potential non-Prop 2.5 related outcomes?
And about, so,
And bring forward a recommendation.
can I tell you?
Yeah, good, if it helps.
That
it flow.
includes,
Yeah.
that may
Stop, stop,
include
stop.
service
See it in
cuts,
front of
Prop 2.5, all,
Yeah, including but not limited to budget cuts and Proposition 2.5.
come forward with an FY 27 budget
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah.
So we have evaluate the outcomes
Oh
and
my
data.
God, don't read it out
It's so hard. We can see it, we'll read to the
We're all-
public
we're all
after, right?
one.
Yeah.
All the colored circles are up there. Typing was the most valuable class I took in high school. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
Now I can't type because you're looking.
We're not looking.
I took Mavis Beacon teaches typing on my computer.
Yes.
Remember this,
I
okay?
remember this, yeah.
You take classes on like electric typewriter?
No,
Manual?
manual typewriter.
Yeah, we did
Yes.
half a session on manual, half on electric.
We couldn't
Not to
afford
date
electric
ourselves.
typewriters. I think they did exist,
Oh, it was
but our
purely
school couldn't, yeah. Yeah, ribbon, all that, yeah.
I never had to do manual.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Not quite.
So, evaluate the data and information presented at the tri-board meetings in order to develop a select board recommendation to town meeting on the FY 27 budget.
Does it necessarily have to be to town meeting?
Well, in
That's-
effect, yes.
Yes.
That's where this is all gonna end up.
Yeah, I get what you're saying though, I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, because we
Yeah.
recommend approval on all warrant articles and the budget's gonna be one of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's fair. This is very.
Including, so after the period, or before that period,
Mhm.
budget, including but not limited to budget cuts.
Yeah, that's the part we missed.
And 2.5% override.
Including but not limited to potential budget cuts
Level of
or,
funding?
level funding, potential budget cuts, I like to go in order. Level funding,
Or Proposition
Or-
2.5 overrides.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can really steal that last sentence.
Yeah, and I think actually put that last S in parentheses, because now that gives you the,
Yeah, options and
Mhm.
multiple overrides. Tiers.
Oh, yep, good. Okay, and then we can just get rid of the
The
other
other.
Yeah.
objective now too, because this
Yeah.
is a little more inclusive of all the outcomes. Are there any other budget-related objectives we want to add?
I think everything else I have is covered under town manager.
I had facilitate transparent public communication to educate residents on the fiscal landscape, timeline for decision-making and implications of budget cuts or override outcomes.
I think the tail end of it is pretty much captured, it's basically the dissemination of the information, I think is captured already with the town manager's goals of the
Town manager.
the
lists
forum
dissemination
sessions,
forms.
right, the presentation, I feel okay with that.
Department heads, maybe. So maybe that's under town manager.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we have that
Talk about
covered,
that in the bottom,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Anything else we want to add?
This is probably gonna be covered under your health insurance, PEC, how do we loop them in? That impacts the budget.
I actually think this one is fair for a dual goal, because you need select board and school committee and the PEC having conversations together.
Is this for a tri-board?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so, but I mean, that's my opinion.
So that would be objective 3, maybe something around evaluating
Yeah, I like that.
health insurance jointly with PEC.
In the school committee.
School committee.
Yeah, we can add that.
Big line item.
Huge.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do we wanna say? Evaluate the,
Not even evaluate, but like engage with the PEC
Mhm.
and school committee on potential modifications
potential modifications
to the PEC agreement.
agreement.
Can we spell out BC for the public?
Yeah, sure.
Rather than using the
Oh,
acronym?
public employee, why did,
Committee,
give me a moment.
is it committee?
Fairly certain it's committee.
Committee,
Yep, public employee committee. Potential modifications to the PEC agreement. Okay,
PEC in parentheses next to public
Healthcare.
employee.
Yeah, we need
agreement.
healthcare on that.
yeah,
No, but just put PEC in parentheses right here.
oh, sure. Okay,
Can we put healthcare?
yeah, I did want to explicitly include, in parentheses, I'll just put health insurance.
why don't we put a space between that parentheses and the and?
Yeah.
I can do it, I don't know why. Alright, I just added it.
I think it's freaking out because we're all in there.
Probably.
Too
Alright,
many people.
any other budget-related objectives?
Well, this is only 3. This is going to
It's
be
a lot.
yeoman's work of everybody.
Well, objective 1 is huge, it's a
Huge.
significant undertaking, and there's a lot that will be covered under that, so. Alright, so then goal number 2, I put
Could we
just,
go back to
Sorry.
goal number 1 for the town manager and just review that?
yeah, sure, we can do that. Do you wanna read through it all again?
Yeah, I just think that now that we're
Okay.
done our goal, we wanna make sure we're,
Do we need to put the PEC as one of your goals too?
Why don't we just copy and paste the same exact language, yeah? And just add select board, school committee and E PEC.
Alright, I'm doing that, so I'm gonna add it to objective 5.
I would
Do we
actually put
wanna
it under
put it up?
objective 1, it really falls under that, it comes into the 5-year, or the 3-year, whatever, financial
Oh, I see what you're
forecast,
saying.
yeah. It's part of that.
so under objective 1, the second one, work with department heads to identify areas where growth is needed, level funding is sufficient, and reductions can be made. Is that gonna be where, you know, if we have to make budget cuts, is that where the reductions can be made? Is that the language that we're,
What I was envisioning with that was self-cuts.
yeah,
So, not like where they're saying, I can, for example,
with it.
I can live without renewing a motorcycle lease. We can live without, so where they're self-cutting, not
not
the,
necessarily we need to
the-
cut people because we're
exactly,
not gonna make
but,
this
exactly.
budget.
It's not the budgetary cuts.
So that's where I wanna see, can we fit that in, that work should be done too, right? If that's what we're,
The self-cutting.
no, I mean, even just,
Oh,
maybe it's not working with the department heads to do that, but
oh,
if
well,
there are gonna be cuts to be made next
so
year.
statutorily and by charter, I have to present a balanced budget. So I have to present a balanced budget. So if that means that there has to be cuts made, I present a, it's sometimes a collaborative process and sometimes it's not.
Okay,
I don't think I see it, and I don't, you tell me if you think it's worth calling out, the option to outsource. Evaluating those options. There's consolidation, joint
Consolidation.
purchasing,
Oh, sure.
consolidation of vendors. It kind of in objective 2, it kind of falls in with that.
So explore town/school operational and budgetary collaboration and efficiencies, including consolidation of departments, joint purchasing, and consolidation of vendors. So we could add outsourcing somewhere here,
yeah,
is what you're saying?
So it would be new vendors, I guess. right?
Oh, I
Things we
feel
don't
like-
currently outsource.
What do
Or
you
things
think
that
of
should be outsourced and
Yeah.
things that shouldn't be
Well,
outsourced.
this specific objective is about, so it needs to probably go somewhere
Yeah.
else. This specific objective is about town and school.
Exactly, it's
Together?
my school.
So, maybe it falls under, again,
Objective
objective one.
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, I think that's kind of
It
included
still
in
could
this
be
one.
town or school, because I mean, if we're talking about IT,
But I think it
that's
needs
still
to
some
be,
outsourcing.
I think it needs to be directly stated, because I
Explicit.
think a lot of people, explicitly, exactly, because a
But
lot
no,
of
but
people
you
just
can have
assume
in
we're
one or
combining
two.
town and school. It doesn't matter where, but I think
I agree with the
objective
town
two
manager.
seems very town school.
That if we're gonna include it, it can be in objective one. So we could, let's see, where does it fit well? Maybe even work with department
Yeah,
heads to
there,
identify areas where growth is
Yeah.
needed. How do you wanna work this?
Yeah, level funding is sufficient, reductions can be made, or, maybe we do an and/or,
Mhm.
Consolidation.
Reviewing potential for outsourcing or,
Consolidations, outsourcing.
So if we're identifying areas where we've said that they have legs, so, and outsourcing is feasible, and/or, to identify areas where outsourcing is feasible. Or not
Or makes
feasible.
financial sense. I mean, it has to
Outsourcing
make
is
sense,
practical, outsourcing is
Where
preferred,
outsources may be
Yeah.
preferred.
possible.
But it's not just
Beneficial.
possible, it's beneficial,
Beneficial.
beneficial.
There we
because
go.
there's times where outsourcing is not the
Not.
way to go.
Yeah.
I don't want,
Of course.
I don't want our
Yeah.
staff to watch this and all of a sudden think like,
Yeah, no.
we're gonna outsource everything.
No.
Right.
Because then that's definitely not what I
Yeah.
want to be presenting as.
No.
No.
What would be examples of something?
Outsourced?
Yeah, like that would be worth the,
Okay, something that we already have outsourced, I'll do it like that. So, the Neshoba Regional Boards of Health are who take care of our health agent services in the town and provide through that our registered sanitarian, our public health nurse. They also do all the permitting. In communities that aren't involved in a collaborative where we're outsourcing through kind of that format, you would have your own staff. So you would have your own health agent or director of public health, I would imagine.
There's some communities that have
Yeah.
like janitorial staff versus
Correct.
outsourcing janitorial cleaning. So like a lot of our, we've moved away from a lot of things, you know, even when my tenure here, we did have staff that were cleaning, we did have things, so there has been things that we've moved out. And maybe there's things that we need to pull back in, or, you know, I think it's reviewing outsourcing, in my opinion, as a whole, or what we should outsource versus what we shouldn't.
And if we're adding outsourcing, we might as well add in here to identify intermunicipal agreements.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially for, you know, things like animal control.
Mm.
yeah.
Kathy is wonderful, but Kathy, I'm not sure can do it forever, so I hope she can.
So we need a plan for how that looks going forward,
Yeah.
and that's,
And identify potential areas where intermunicipal agreements may be beneficial.
yeah.
You can maybe combine those, identify areas where outsourcing and/or
Yeah,
intermunicipal.
yes,
Sure.
I like that.
I was actually just talking to a department today about a potential for an IMA, so I think that's also, sometimes intermunicipal agreements don't always save money,
Mm.
but the quality of services that you get is so much more expanded that it is ultimately.
Worth it, yeah.
Worth it.
So in our select board objectives, objective 2, we list the potential budget cuts, the level funding, or Proposition 2 Apple Drive. Do we want to include any of that language?
Well, I think this is specifically like, what are we recommending when we get the final budget to town meeting, right? So I kind of see that as being more in the nitty gritty within that process of how we get to that finalized product. That's sort of how I'm viewing the difference here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I agree with that. I just want to kind of say aloud, as we are exploring these things, just for the record, none of these potential IMAs or outsourcing, they'll help, but none of them are a panacea for solving the problems.
Of course.
So I just wanted
Yeah.
to kind of get that.
We just need to turn over every rock.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
Do the
do we,
work.
do we want to continue going on with the goal number 1 for the town manager or the select board? Or how do we feel about it at this point?
I think everything I had is now captured between the two.
The only thing I had mentioned earlier too was the analyzing any data on compensation or staffing, but I think you're getting that with the department heads.
Okay.
The best we can. I
Yeah,
think
exactly, the best we
we
can. I don't
need
think
to
we need
do-
that big analysis, but I think we need at least
We need to do, well, we do
a
need
rough
it.
analysis of, okay, they
Yeah.
want this position, okay,
Right.
ballpark, what are they going
And I
for?
think that's
We need,
definitely
we need
included.
both. We do need a
So-
What are they
comprehensive.
posting for?
To the staff that is listening to this, I am going to try to do a comp class plan. Okay, we're gonna try to do this. The reason why I'm suggesting that we don't include that on the goals is because it is not funded and we don't know if it's reasonable within the time limit. But to the staff that's listening, I think we're all realizing that we need to look at our classifications and our competitiveness as well.
Yeah.
That could be an effort.
But it could be a different,
funding
it
request.
could be at different levels.
Right, right,
I
exactly.
just, yeah, I wanna make sure people are paid adequately and we're not waiting, pushing it down,
Well, yeah, of course.
pushing it down the road.
I agree.
In any of the problem cases, don't you have a feel for yourself where we could just address them similar to what just happened with the DPW?
Well, that's what I was, that
Yeah.
example.
I mean,
It seems, you know, it's one of the things I wonder sometimes is when the towns spend so much money on these, you know, studies.
I don't know what you're referring to, what just happened, but.
The pay raise.
The pay of the DPW director, how he
Oh.
was underpaid. Like, I don't think we need that, you know, we obviously didn't need to hire somebody to
Right.
tell us that.
It's more when you get to, there's a lot of folks who are serving in administrative assistant roles, and it's, at the department head level titled roles, the data's a little more easy to ascertain. I know right away when we're getting job descriptions in, or not job, when we're getting applications in, I can tell from the applications where we're positioned in the market by the
Yeah.
quality of the application. It's immediately apparent.
Yeah.
But department head level is easier.
We've also been trying to accomplish that goal, to do this townwide common class plan for
5?
staff members are pushing for it for as long as I have had been in town, and that's since 2012. So it's long overdue. I think the last time it was fully done was 1994 or something. There's been a lot of bits and pieces that have been updated since then, but a full comp and class plan is, I don't believe there was one in between. I could be misspeaking, I'll have to look at that, but it's been a long time.
All right, anything else on the budget?
No.
All right, so let's stick with the town manager's goal, and then let's go to goal number 2, employee experience.
Wait, we're sticking with town manager?
Yeah. Yes. So objective 1, work with town staff, labor council, select board, bylaws committee, and other stakeholders to review the salary administration plan bylaw and draft amendments to the same, including those that modernize the bylaw and aid in the recruitment and retention of town employees. I'm just gonna capitalize town. The target date for presentation of the proposed changes is the 2025 special town meeting, with an additional opportunity for further review and consideration of proposals that may require a longer lead time at the 2026 annual town meeting. I think it's a great objective.
I think it's great too, but do
Yeah.
you think that you can do this with everything else that we just outlined? I feel like we're setting you up to have too
If we
much.
don't address the vacation element of at least the SAP at this town meeting, I think we're gonna have an incredibly,
You know how I feel. I mean, I am so very
So-
pro updating these things. I just don't wanna put too much on you that you,
as much as I would like to have a soup to nuts overhaul of the SAP, if we can at least commit to getting the kind of the bigger problematic elements dealt with at the fall
Mhm.
special. I mean, I can tell you that this is already on the assistant town manager's desk to start engaging and collecting feedback from staff about what their, to start that within the next several weeks, about what their feedback is on the SAP,
so this is just SAP.
the bylaw. Yeah, this is just specific to the bylaw. This goal is,
specific to SAP.
yeah, the bylaw itself, yeah.
Do you feel like this is attainable with your other staff, with everything else that we just outlined?
If the bylaws committee is engaged, and they're kind of filling in that, what would have been the role of the personnel committee, then yes.
But how can we put that in here, that if that doesn't happen, that it's not, you're not gonna be, your
Well-
performance review isn't gonna be negatively impacted, because you can't, as two people in your office, do this without that engagement. And it's not,
Fair.
I'm a big
Yeah.
proponent of a goal you're a town manager, so your goals are always gonna be connected to other boards and committees, other staff members. But for this one in particular, where we haven't had this engagement at all, I don't wanna see you, if we have to evaluate you on this, it'd be, if you
So
don't have an
you're saying
engagement, I don't know, I'm just,
Shift the target date for the,
or even just a qualifier,
or just take out that last sentence and just leave it,
Mm.
take out the target date and just
Or do
leave
we
it.
limit it to the vacation? Do we
I-
limit the scope?
I don't think we need to specify the scope. We can take out the target date part.
yeah, I think, we know what the
Can you
target
put
date
it
is.
back though for a second?
Yeah,
I just wanted to see what it was.
Yeah, I just,
I mean, I think that there is some low-hanging fruit that can be addressed at the fall special, and I'd like to,
what if we put
Put
in
that on the warrant.
something like understanding, I can't see it, did it come out now?
Contingent upon?
I
Yeah,
think just
the
the
target date for
presentation.
the presentation,
I wouldn't even put a date. I would just leave it as a presentation of proposed changes presented to the select board or special town meeting. Or annual town
well, when I
meeting.
go to town meeting, I'm going with I wanna go with it's on the warrant. This isn't like a preview. It's a,
Yeah,
it's
it's,
a.
So
this
you're
is
going
on-
no matter what.
No, what I'm saying is, I don't wanna have like, in contrast to the stormwater task force presented at town meeting to give a highlight preview, this is coming, get ready,
No.
folks, start to wrap your head around it.
changes will be considered.
When I say present to town meeting, I mean,
They're voting on it.
they're voting it. Right, they're voting it.
So when you're talking about the vacation, is that, you want to be able to match someone coming here in terms of,
Not even, so actually, good question, because you're probably not familiar with how the vacation works. So if you are not in a union and you are hired by the town of Lunenburg, you accrue vacation time during that first year, which you are not allowed to use. And so you, beginning on July 1st, can accrue you can use what you have accrued in the prior year. So that could mean that you have a staff member who, if they start in the spring, they are working for a year and a quarter, a year and a half with under a week's vacation time. I have department heads who have come from other communities who did not realize this was here. And they are late in their career and have given decades of service. And then you have other people who they come in, who aren't at that level, who do not realize it and
it's
say,
an antiquated
and say,
practice.
I'm so sorry, but I did not realize this was the case. I didn't realize I wouldn't have any vacation time for over a year.
So as I'm trying to read it and understand it too, because thank you for the explanation. Would it be accurate to say that you already have a plan for like your fall town meeting, you've got something in mind already?
Oh.
And you might have more.
Vacation, I would like, so I have a plan that I don't have the draft of the language, right? But will the draft of the language around vacation time be completed by fall special? Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing really that's
I
gonna stop
can't
you.
control the buy-in though of the bylaws committee, of the other folks.
And the vacation is not that it's tiny in terms of its impact, but it's a small part of
It's
the
a small-
SAP,
yeah.
part of the
But could the
bylaw.
bylaw committee stop you from presenting at the special town meeting?
No,
I feel like they can't. I
No.
feel like you have an idea of something.
No, but I think,
But
Yeah.
I feel like the way that this is worded right here, right now, is to review the
whole
SAP bylaw and draft amendments to the same, including those that modernize the bylaw. That's what I'm saying is a big goal, and if it's just you and you don't have a bylaw committee that's helping you on it, yes, we can target things that we know, vacation, yes,
yeah.
and
So
that's an
why don't we
attainable
just
goal.
say, work, blah, 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 to conduct an initial review of the salary administration plan.
okay, but I do want to message to staff that are
Yeah.
serious about some, and Amanda, I'm not sure if you know of other ones similar to vacation that are really crying out for addressing, but if there's some that are not as complicated and are convoluted, but,
What about initial proposed changes? Like, it doesn't have to be all the proposed changes.
Oh.
just,
initial
Like-
proposed changes?
like, we're not getting all the proposed changes,
But
but
we're gonna
the
take
initial
a
proposed
big chunk.
changes at the 2025 special town meeting with an additional opportunity for further
Yeah,
implementation.
At
further-
future town meetings,
I like
Yeah.
that.
and maybe not just even say the May, just say at future town
Mhm.
meetings.
Yeah, I mean, it is a one-year goal, so I don't know
Yeah.
if it needs to.
Right.
Right,
go that
that's
far.
true.
No, but I like saying initial, because that way it's like,
Yeah,
If-
she has something already in mind,
Yeah,
like, she's
and
gonna
if-
do it.
if we come
So
forward.
make it 12.
And
That's a
if we
goal.
come forward with two, and they're like, well, hey, you only reviewed 2 sections of the SAP bylaw,
Yeah,
are
that's
you saying
fine.
the rest of it's perfect? By
No.
saying initial, we
She's saying
say,
most
Right.
important.
yeah,
So that's
I like
why,
initial,
yeah.
yeah, good work.
I do actually see that for a comprehensive review of the SAP bylaw, without having done the full comprehensive review, I would imagine that the outcome would be a very stripped down bylaw that's replaced by
Policies.
policies.
Which I think there are certain policies that should be townwide that are not, that
Did you
should be
delete that
applied.
last sentence again?
I did, yeah.
Wait, why?
I
The
think we
part
keep it.
about,
The person, she's gonna still go to the fall town meeting for that initial,
yeah, to present the initial modifications at the special town meetings and potential additional changes at the annual town meeting. Okay.
You don't need that first initial, right? You're gonna conduct a review, but you'll present initial recommendations.
Right.
There was a lot of
Right,
discussion
yeah.
on it, so
Initial
I wanted to
modifications
explicitly
or
add it
initial
in.
The
recommendations.
second line, initial review.
Initial.
Yeah.
She's going
Yeah.
to conduct a review,
And then it's an initial recommendation.
Yes.
present initial recommendation.
Alright, are we good with this one?
At the special town meeting, just meeting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Potential additional what? Potential additional
Recommendations.
Recommendations.
Let's just keep it the same, modifications, yeah.
modifications. Additional modifications at the annual town meeting.
Or at future town meetings. At a future, yeah.
There's only gonna be one more.
Yeah, there's only
fiscal
one
year.
meeting, so.
But I thought we left it open.
It's just for.
Well, I think it would be another
27.
year, another goal, could be a separate
A
goal.
carryover
Just
goal.
because it's
Yeah.
this goal, you're not gonna carry it over, right? The
Alright,
next select board could carry it over as a goal.
alright, let's go to objective 2. Work with staff to identify weaknesses in the town's orientation and onboarding practices, create an updated orientation materials package and process with a target rollout date of January 1st, 2026. Develop an onboarding program for departments that do not have a formalized program. Begin to roll out onboarding/training as developed with a formalized program developed by June 30th, 2026.
Really?
I'm again, like,
What were you
this
saying about biting off and
this
chewing
is-
and choking?
is, this is great, and this is what we've been talking about that we wanna do, but this is, especially with
That's
the
a lot this
January
year.
date.
The
how are you gonna do
orientation,
that?
so orientation versus onboarding, I think is
Different things.
is definitely doable. So we need to beef up our orientation.
Yeah. Right.
For sure.
Onboarding is gonna be as it comes.
Mhm.
So that's what I was trying to capture, that we are formalizing onboarding plan. Maybe June 30th is a little aggressive, but
Yeah, I think just take that part out. I think just go with the orientation.
Or even
I just
if
think
begin
it's
to
a
roll
ready
out,
for
multi-year
this
goal.
year. Yeah, it's not ready for
It's
this
a
year yet.
multi-year goal.
begin
something
to
to work
roll
on.
out
Can you-
onboarding training.
She's gonna do work outside the goals, but it's like, that's something you could do work outside the goal, but it's not a goal that you're gonna be evaluated on.
So just the orientation and for
Yeah,
the.
well, then you could even say begin to develop an onboarding program for
Sure.
departments.
But is that something that she has to be
It's not-
evaluated for?
Yeah, you really can't measure.
I think no, I think
If
it's
you
not
put it
something that
in
you're
the
gonna.
context of beginning to evaluate it, if
Yeah,
you
you-
want to, and if you don't, that's okay too.
If you do
It's your
it.
decision.
Exactly. If you do it, yeah, that's why I think not.
If you don't put it in there and you do it,
Great, yeah, exactly.
Am I moving into 17 Main Street? Is that my new house?
What do you wanna do, Jen?
Can I ask a question before you're thinking? We don't have to set these finally tonight.
No,
We can come back to these, right?
Of
later?
course.
I feel like we're having so many discussions
We
that I
are.
could go home and look at it and be like.
we're definitely not gonna finalize it tonight,
So what I'm trying, so one of the things that I'm trying to do in this is that your goals become my goals, and my goals become department head goals,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And department head goals become forming goals, and
Mhm.
it just goes down from there. So the orientation materials, I think, is a lower lift to revamp our orientation process. I think some of what you heard in the feedback from employees during the listening sessions and during that engagement was the lack of a real onboarding, and that's what you were trying to address. So what I'm trying to do is say, we're gonna finish you're never finished, right? You're always improving. But we're gonna get to a better finalized, this is our new orientation program. And we are going to make tangible, concrete steps towards implementing certain things on an onboarding, for the onboarding program. It probably couldn't be complete by June 30th, but I don't.
But what work do you wanna get done?
I
for the
want,
onboarding?
right, I want,
Meetings with the department heads, meeting with, what's the onboarding experience?
I mean, I think that there's some core trainings and maybe, there's some core things that we should have in place by the end of the year, that are core.
Do you wanna come back to this?
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Just leave it how
Because
it
I
is.
think
Yeah.
as is too much.
I always think, yeah, like, what is the work that you're gonna get done? Okay, let's
Yeah.
put that as your goal, but I think it's not there yet.
Is there a contract in our documents?
No, but I can drop it.
All right, we can come back to this one.
Because I would like to look at, as we're setting these, how we're evaluating them at the same time.
It's early, so it's not the full year, you evaluate, I wanna say April 15th.
Mhm.
Let's see.
I think it sounds good,
Yeah, okay, here we go. So. All right, so the goals and objectives shall be reduced to writing by July 15th. So to the question of do we have time, yes, we have time. The, may be amended from time to time, and then there's quarterly reports on the goals and objectives for more frequent intervals as the board may request. There's a automatic check-in in November. And then self-evaluation by April 15th. And then the actual evaluation instrument is not attached to this, but the evaluation instrument, I don't email me.
Do we have to talk about that now? Or
Well, just because I think that it comes into how,
Yeah, I mean,
it comes,
Evaluating at
it
what
does,
point?
It's that
Yeah.
whole SMART
No,
goal thing.
it-
How are we gonna,
rate on the goals.
how am I gonna rate this goal aligns with how I wanna write the goal?
No, I understand,
I'm not sure if
because we have to make sure that we can evaluate it properly,
Mhm.
so. Why don't we
Especially if
just,
we're talking about beginning something, like that's a
Right.
hard goal, that's a hard thing to rate
To measure.
Mhm.
and measure.
yeah, so we just wanna make this.
That's why I think if you can break it into, smaller nuggets that are,
I also have
Found.
never done a town manager evaluation still to
Yeah.
this date, and or ever seen one, or what the forms look like, so
Mhm.
it's hard to set these goals when I don't
Well,
know
let
what
me,
I'm working towards.
Let me share that with the board.
Yeah.
I'll find that instrument so that you can look at what that evaluation
Yeah,
instrument looks like.
it's
Yeah,
been a while.
that'll be
since
helpful
we've
to,
done it,
actually, nobody here has done
so,
No,
none of us have?
No.
no,
no, I just assume it's very similar to the
that. I've seen it, like
superintendent's
I've seen
evaluation, but
others.
it's
You
gonna be a
follow
little
that
different,
same,
right?
Nope.
whatever that case is, the Sudbury case, both
Oh,
of
yes.
us.
It was done after.
But,
So they're close.
All right, so let's-
yeah.
let's just put a pin in this one for now, and we'll jump down objective 3. Items to be carried over
Wait.
from,
Hold on. Sorry, sorry, Mr. Chair. I just. We're at 2, okay,
Objective 3,
items to be carried over from the select board FY25 goals, implement annual climate survey and townwide employee recognition program.
Those are just things from yours that
Yeah,
I thought
I mean-
belonged on mine.
Were they finished?
Our side of it was, now
Is
it's just
there
the
a
implementation.
climate survey?
No,
We have a climate survey, the employee recognition program isn't, because we'll have to
We
go back to
created
that.
the policy for the climate survey, right?
yeah, but I would caution you from saying that you finished them. So they weren't, so, the merit element, townwide merit, we kind of came to the point that you couldn't do it townwide the way it was introduced.
For the employee
For the
recognition
employees,
part.
for the recognition part.
Yeah,
Those
So,
are two separate.
they
so
are.
that, right, so that piece of it though didn't, I mean, that
No,
hasn't
we
happened.
have to revisit that
Right.
part.
Okay,
Right.
is there an annual climate survey?
Yeah, it's not annual,
So,
every other year.
so no, there's an annual climate survey policy that's been developed,
Yes.
right? But we have not,
Implemented.
we have not sent out, we have not hired a company to do an annual climate survey, we have not done an annual, so that part, so that's why I'm saying I'm cautioning of the board did the work to create the policy.
So are you comfortable with having this go on, Sarah? Okay.
Can we change it to employee? Is the policy a townwide employee recognition program? Because I would
Not
just
at
say
the
let's
moment.
just change it to an employee recognition program then.
The goal is to get it to be townwide, because it's not at the moment.
It's
And you
lives
could
in
be
the
able to get
It's
SAP.
just an
schools in
ESAP.
there and like this, what, I don't know if that's
So-
not realistic.
Procedurally, this is what happened. So there was feedback that came that employees, this would be a benefit to employees, to have some recognition, to boost morale,
Yeah.
da-da-da. The vehicle by which it was implemented was through a bylaw change to the SAP. So
It just affects the SAP employees.
and that was, I think, an oversight in the creation. So when the discussion came up, do we want to have a policy that then takes this and applies it more broadly, take the same language and apply it across? The determination was made at that time, no. That what I believe, where it was left is that we should repeal the SAP bylaw that was passed and supplement it after potential bargaining conversations, or have a discussion that we remove the monetary element of it, right? So this merit policy was very specific that there would be a small bonus, I guess a small amount of money that folks, a couple $100, that if you won this title, that you would receive this remuneration. And so the concern was that if there's going to be a monetary element, it should be bargained. And so it
So
kind of fell apart.
So I feel like this says, yeah, I'm concerned about getting this done
Mhm.
within a year.
Yeah.
And I
With
think it
everything
should
else.
be, not necessarily even our goals, but as we bargain, we should consider this in our bargaining.
If I had to make a proposal without anybody's buy-in right now, this is how I would say we do it. We take the SAP language that was put in at the last special, we remove it. We disconnect, I know that most employees are not being motivated by $200. But there are employees who they are motivated very much by having their name on a plaque and that they get a special recognition, right? That you either are gonna be motivated, if you're not getting motivated by $200, you're not gonna get motivated to rise above and beyond, right? And so that we make it just, we remove the money from it, we do something else in lieu of the money, and then we don't have to bargain it. And so we have a merit policy, we make a big deal out of the people, we have the plaques, we put their names up, but that, I think the task to get there, if that's acceptable to folks, is simple, because it's removing a bylaw and creating a policy. And then we wouldn't have to bargain it without the money.
In the community I'm in, there's something, an employee recognition program that other employees can, nominate someone, and they pick somebody from a hat once a month, and they get a $25 gift card. So there's a balance that the town is able to buy local gift cards.
Yep.
So it's not, and it's given out, that one employee a month gets a $25 gift card. It's just a little thing, but it's also other employees recognizing each other. But I'm not opposed to pulling out the money, because like you said, $200 over a year and your taxes are gonna get taken out. But
Nobody's doing anything
I don't think
extra
that-
for $200. I mean, maybe they are.
I would like as an employee, I would rather see the $25 that might get put on a plaque versus hey, give me a $25, Dunkin's gift
I
card.
think it's about being recognized
Yeah.
and feeling
But
that
something that
you're
we could
important
consider.
and that you're doing good work.
I know that I worked at a place that had this, and we had quarterly, and every quarter, because I was that employee, I wanted to see whether my name was in there, and that was
Oh, yeah.
motivating towards me.
Oh, that's
for
me
me.
too, yeah. So.
So do you wanna keep it?
I think I would like to keep it, I wanted to say that I don't think that the lifted on it is necessarily as heavy as it might initially sound.
Yeah, we wanna make
if-
sure it's realistic. that's
If
all.
folks are in line with that general we're gonna repeal and replace with something and maybe it doesn't need to be bargained, I think it's pretty easy,
As long as it's repealed.
as long as it's repealed. Right, because you never know what the voters are gonna do.
Well, if it's not repealed, then you still
Then it-
are gonna implement the town-wide
Yeah.
employee recognition
Well.
program, or whatever recognition.
SAP,
That's why,
SAP
that's why I think I'm hesitant to even say town-wide, just have an employee recognition program. If it ends up being town-wide, it ends up being town-wide.
Town employee,
The reason why the townwide was because of the specific
Right.
exclusion, so it probably
So
doesn't.
the effort is
Yeah.
is specifically to make it townwide.
Yeah.
So. I mean, we could say something.
But if
to
they
that
don't want it to
effect,
be
right.
town-wide, if the town doesn't want it to be town-wide,
Well,
the
attempt
employees don't
and
want it to be
present
town-wide.
it to town meeting, you know, we could have language to accommodate that, but, I don't know, what do you think, Jim? Do you wanna just leave that objective there? Do you wanna modify it at all?
I just don't think it's gonna be that difficult.
Yeah,
And I think it's a good
and
thing.
then we amend the goal, we amend the
Yeah.
objective.
Yeah, if
Because
it's,
it's not-
We can amend it
it's
later
not-
If we had to.
yeah,
do you wanna add
It's not
language
relevant.
like, something that is contingent upon, you know, a vote at town meeting, you know, you never know what's
so
gonna
I'm
happen
pulling
there.
up the SAP right now, because
Yeah.
I wanted to see that exact language of whether the money was in it. But, I'm
pretty
Yeah, I
sure
think it is.
I think
It
it
is.
is, I think it is too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think that you need to make that language contingent, I think
Okay.
that you know when you're doing the review, what happened at town meeting
Yeah.
and where it,
Well, we can also amend it right
Right.
after.
We can,
right,
alright.
tried,
And
failed,
even if it doesn't change, you can still implement the
right.
current, whatever it is.
Alright, let's go down to municipal property. And this is one where we do have one potentially that'll overlap, that one we don't. So, objective 1, TC Passios. Coordinate with various departments on the partial decommissioning of the TC Passios building. Goal to be completed prior to heating season. This is a big project that has, here we go with the notes that
The 11:30 at night notes.
Yeah, this is a big project that has a lot of steps and will require a lot of collaboration. In addition to the decommissioning work with various stakeholders to develop a short-term 10-year plan for the building. Issues to consider are current and future use of the building, roof repair, asbestos remediation, planning for partial demolition, and understanding and controlling operating costs after partial decommissioning. So, yeah, that's a lot.
So this is already something that the facilities director is actively working on, right?
Mhm.
So we have had some discussions about how there's gonna be a phased move out and a phased wind down of the building. He is pretty sure he can complete this by before the heating season, which is why we're specifically trying, the goal is to benchmark it against the heating season, so that we are not expending funds on heating that portion of the building. And then what happens next, right? So we know we have money that was appropriated at a town meeting for the roof repair, but it was very specific that it was on the wrong portion, or not the wrong portion, but at the time it was the right portion, but now we're doing something different with the building, right? So would have to get that funding moved over if town meeting were to vote in the affirmative to move that funding to the other part of the building. And then we need to figure out a plan, and so this doesn't mean this is all done, that the asbestos remediation is done. This is, what does the 5-year capital plan look like for TCP? That would be another way to say it. What does a 5-year plan look like for TCP for capital needs? And then the 10-year plan was, I've heard some conversations in the community that why are we putting any money into TCP if at the end it might just be nothing? Well, we do have short-term tenants that we need to accommodate, right? So we have PAC over there until something happens, we have rec over there, we have the food pantry over there. Am I missing anybody? We have
Voting
Our
town clerk.
elections were there.
town elections, we have town
clerk
storage
is also
there. Yeah, so
It's a lot.
we can't just walk away from the building without addressing some of the infrastructure needs, but we need to have a plan for what happens. And even if we do, so this could be phased, in my conversations with the facilities director, even if we don't know that we're going to definitely remove that back portion of the building in a time certain, that asbestos work needs to happen regardless. So we can bite it if it makes better sense. This is evaluating this. If it makes better sense to bite off pieces of this and deal with the asbestos first, doesn't mean we have to deal with the next steps, but just having that plan.
Right.
I don't want this building to sit and get in any worse condition. The other thing is we really do not have a good handle on the operating costs of this building after this change. We don't know what the operating costs of the building are, even without, if we weren't to decommission parts of it, but we just don't have the foot traffic in there with the school administration leaving, right? So we really need to understand what is the cost of operating this building, and that we need to go through the heating cycle to get there.
I think just adding an action item of fall town meeting, special town meeting in
To
there.
move that 300.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be good.
Yeah, and without going down that rabbit hole, that was, one of the many concerns I had with the proposed town hall project was the fact that there was no clear plan for the patio. So it was, for me personally, it was to struggle that, the town wanted to develop a plan, and I thought that kind of fell into the charge of the Municipal Building Design Committee. But the fact that, these action items were, again, part of one of the serious concerns I had with, adding such an expensive project, having this large building here that has so many needs. And, one of the points of, nothing's, cheaper than doing it today. Tomorrow it's most expensive. And that one thing you mentioned, it was always a hanging concern for me, was the asbestos remediation. It seems to me that was one of an issue that has to be handled regardless, no matter what happens. So I just didn't know why that expense hadn't been taken on. And that's just one, the many facets of issues I think need to be addressed prior to spending so much on a new building and rehabbing town hall. So I think that is a very, very, very important goal, and it's just hard to detach the thought that, could that have been, and I know that that goes back 10 or so years where that plan was, they chose not to go forward with it because it is this,
Was the asbestos remediation in the Vertex reports or in any of them, do we know?
I would imagine.
I think so, yeah.
The asbestos is very
It just
clear.
gets kicked down.
Even by the
Yeah.
size of
I'm
the
just-
tile, you just know that
You just
there's
made me think
asbestos.
of, all the times that we've been trying to do things with our buildings and all the money and the plans that we've spent on these
Yeah.
things. It's like,
and yet we haven't removed
Do
the
we want
asbestos.
to, yeah, do we want to connect that to the council plan or not?
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
probably not fitting for the objective though.
I mean, I
No,
think
but-
this is one thing that, like, this is a goal that, there's part of this that is
Mhm.
already happening, right?
Mhm.
There's part of this that we're doing anyways. I just wanna make sure that we don't just check off that part and say, we're done now.
no, no.
No, I like the idea of the short-term plan as well. Develop a short-term plan.
Okay, so I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna remove this little note here. This is a big project, there's a lot of steps, will require a lot of collaboration. So I'm gonna keep the first sentence, not gonna modify it, and then we'll say, in addition to the decommissioning work with various stakeholders, I'll just say like collaborate maybe. Collaborate with various stakeholders to develop a short-term, 10-year plan for the building. Issues to consider are current and future use. I'll say, considering, so I'll do like,
Wait, so the short term is a 10-year?
makes sense
Okay.
for a property, yeah.
Yeah, sure, like, just, because we don't know the other things, we know that PAC is likely to remain, we know rec is likely to remain, we know the food pantry, so we need to, what else does that?
We need to keep the roof from.
Is
leaking.
Exactly.
Is there
Right.
10 years of life left in that part of the building?
In the new part, if we get the roof
For the
repaired,
roof, yeah.
yeah, if we get the roof
That's-
repaired. The water's problematic for drinking, but
Yeah.
it's not,
Heating?
Needs
cooling?
water.
Water cooler would be nice.
so some of these really old boilers, until you can't get parts, although they're inefficient, they
But
can
the
be
parts
workhorses.
Availability does become an issue.
The parts availability does become an issue. We're also gonna be making it do a lot less. because it's gonna be heating
right.
like a third of the building.
But I would assume that would be part of this.
That's part of the decommissioning.
Mhm.
That's already happening.
No, but even just identifying,
Oh.
like, you know,
If we need a new,
right,
we're
is
gonna
this,
keep this building.
yeah, is the boiler gonna last 10 years, or do we already know the parts are gonna be decommissioned next year?
Do we put the roof fall town meeting on there?
Yeah, I think in
Yeah,
parentheses
probably.
next to the roof repair.
Oh, I see. Let's see.
Oh,
I'm just gonna put special town meeting, is that okay? Do you wanna put anything else? Okay. Alright, do you wanna do one more read through of this? It is pretty lengthy. So TC Passios, coordinate with various departments on the partial decommissioning of the TC Passios building. Goal to be completed prior to heating season. I'll just say to be completed here. In addition to the decommissioning work, collaborate with various stakeholders to develop a short-term 10-year plan for the building, including current and future use of the building, roof repair, special town meeting, asbestos remediation, plan for partial demolition, and understanding and controlling operating costs after the partial decommissioning. Sounds pretty solid.
Do you think you're gonna be able to understand and control the operating costs after decommissioning? Is the decommissioning, you have enough of a window? I mean, if the decommissioning is happening by fall town meeting.
So, no, the decommissioning starts July 1.
and plan,
Right, but how are you gonna understand and control the operating
Well,
costs?
it does say to develop a short-term plan for how to control operating costs is what she's trying to get at here.
Right, the develop a short-term, it's being modified by the developer. Develop the short-term plan to understand and control, develop the short-term,
Oh, I was
so,
looking at those as, I got it. I
so,
was looking at those as
Separate.
separate.
I think we're gonna know at least what our first heating season was after it, so we'll have that data. Because by, I
That's a
don't know,
big
April,
expense.
that's
and
huge.
collect
Big part of
data,
maintenance.
maybe and collect data on operating costs
And
after
collect.
the partial commission. I think that's all we want, we just want the data. I
It-
don't know if we're gonna.
and fairly, right
understand
now, we
operating
have-
costs.
We have no idea what it's gonna cost to run this building.
Determine
haven't been-
operating costs, do we wanna say that? And determine operating costs after the partial decommissioning?
I don't know if you're gonna know that, right? Like, we're
You're
gonna
not gonna know all
start
of them.
No,
it
well,
in the
yeah.
fall, you'll have the winter.
We'll know the operating costs
You'll know
as
some
it,
of the months. That's why
as
I
it
feel
relates
like
to
you
each.
start or initiate or.
And work to understand operating costs after
Sure.
the partial
Yeah.
decommissioning?
yeah.
I mean, it should be less than it is today.
Well, except that a lot of those costs have shifted. So one thing that actually, you know, that we weren't even considering at the time, when we rented out the 4 classrooms, is those classrooms had been maintained under the janitorial staff. Well, we don't have any cleaners, so we're gonna have to add cleaning services to TCP. That was a cost we never had. We are now
Because of.
we weren't paying for the internet at TCP, we're now paying for the internet at TCP. We are picking up substantial operating costs that
And the
Paying
outdoor,
for internet?
the outdoor too.
the
The
school,
schools would pay.
the school carried the internet.
And what about grass and snow?
Well, so the grass and snow, there was an agreement that the schools were gonna continue to maintain the grass area.
For how
but-
long?
Yeah, right, it's literally a gentleman's agreement.
But this is another one of, here's a building gifted to you.
Yep.
Take it. The annex building. We need the plan when these buildings get decommissioned.
So is leasing out those classrooms gonna cost the town money?
It's probably not gonna cost us anything, but it's certainly, we're not gonna generate any revenue. It's gonna probably be a wash.
Alright, anything else on TC Passios? Alright, objective 2, 925 Main Street. Complete the sale of 925 Main Street within the fiscal year. This project was brought very close to the finish line by the former town manager, but no action has been taken since she departed. An RFP had been developed and certain due diligence had been undertaken. Completion of this process will require the engagement of legal counsel, consideration of RFP versus auction, and sale preparation and completion. So I can remove this middle part.
Yeah, this is all really for you, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also.
And are we gonna be able to complete the sale?
All right, so,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
But
yes,
where's
yes.
925?
So it's the gas
This is a
station.
gas
station.
station.
The gas
That's not-
station.
So it's Mass Ave,
Mass
it's not Main
Ave,
Street.
I know.
Oh, did I?
Yep,
Oh.
I was fixing
I
it.
literally was like, I don't think Main Street goes to 925.
Mass Ave. 11:30.
I know, I read that, I was like, that's not right.
So that's why I
That's
literally was
massive.
like, my brain was not computing where this.
So there have been years of effort on this. There's been a substantial amount of work. There's been substantial grants. We are at the, if the town manager did not depart when she did, this property would be sold.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where that was. There was a decision made at some point on the process, to go the RFP route with this. I don't know if people who are interested in buying commercial property, if they're really looking in combis to see what's available for RFPs, so I do want to explore that before we put it out. Intuitively, auction to me tells me that we're gonna get the best price. But that said,
Explore.
we have basically the full package ready to go, whether it lives as an RFP or an auction, all the due diligence has been done. What we have not done is clearly defined. It's that we need to understand, first and foremost, what exactly the work of the town manager was at the time, to understand exactly what had happened, and then run it by legal counsel, make that determination of how, and then get it sold. Really, anytime that happens within the fiscal year, we're getting the revenue, so as long as it happens within the fiscal year.
So
But-
instead of saying for this goal, it's the sale and preparation and completion, do you wanna say work towards the sale of, and not have the
What's the
measure
end product?
part of the objective be the actual completion of the sale?
I mean, so I just wonder with what would be the barriers to sale? Like what, if we, I mean,
No buyer.
somebody's
No,
gonna
but
buy it
it's
for
an
a dollar.
auction, you're gonna
Somebody's
buy it
gonna
for a
buy
dollar,
it.
exactly.
Right, so
You're
we're
gonna
gonna
get market
So we're gonna
price.
get a dollar, we're gonna
Yeah.
get at least a dollar.
Yeah,
And I know, I mean, I get calls in the office, there are folks that are interested in this property.
Really? That's good.
Mhm.
yeah, and you get market price, the auctions are,
The environmental work now is
They work.
defined, so folks know what they can do, what has been done. The analysis, in connection with the, APDC and the, you know, how they could reconfigure the bylaw, that's all been laid out for them. So it is a nice package. And I'm sure if Heather was here for just a month longer, it probably would have been out.
Are you comfortable with the
I'm comfortable.
objective being measured by sale preparation and completion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there's something that happens, right, if you
Yeah.
go to an auction and,
Yeah.
like.
No one shows up.
No one shows up, or
Yeah.
something happens, then,
unlikely.
the board would have an understanding of why that goal,
Okay.
but I think it's absolutely reasonable to get it sold in the year.
I'm curious, do we have assessed value on that property? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't, but I can look it up.
How much money could?
maybe it's not, yeah.
Couple $100,000.
That's what, yeah, okay.
Alright, let's go to objective
Maybe it's
three.
not complete, yeah.
Tax title, the town has final judgment on a number of properties. The treasurer/collector has been working on putting together a tax title auction, goal to be completed prior to the end of the fiscal year. So we can,
So, a number of properties have some interest, for retention by boards, committees, commissions. So we need to re-engage them to see if they're still interested. And then have that conversation be borne out with the select board, because really that's where that lives. And then the rest of it, 184,000 is the assessed value.
oh, thank you.
And then we should get an auction scheduled. And I mean, I know there's at least one that has a single family home on it. That's, a lot of times these tax title auctions, they are landlocked land. When you have a house, that usually makes enough interest in an auction that you get buyers to come.
Okay.
We need to not sit on our tax title. The goal, we should not be in the business of being landlords. The goal is not to retain ownership. The goal is to get properties back in the tax roll.
Tax, yeah, understood. Alright, do we wanna rework this at all? Okay.
I have one other
Just,
municipal property.
yeah, I have more municipal
That asks
properties,
about-
yeah.
Brooks House. Where does that live?
In my opinion.
Where does, well, I think this is a bigger discussion.
Yeah, and we also have this
but-
on the select board goals too.
Yep.
Maybe that's where Brooks House lives.
Mm.
That's more of a
I have
political
Brooks House and
football.
I have Municipal Building Design Committee
Yeah,
on the select board.
all of those buildings, and I have Marshall Park as
So
well.
those are all on the select board ones, maybe we should look at that.
Yeah,
But Mass Ave comes off the select board.
yeah. I like
Yeah, that has been under the town manager for
Yeah.
a while.
that. So maybe we talk about all the properties on the select board ones. the other ones.
Mhm. Okay. So I did have Marshall Park. So do you want me to remove 925 Mass Ave and then replace that with Brooks House? And then that would probably be a good objective one actually for us.
I think
Finalize.
objective one should be the
Municipal
municipal building
Building,
design.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
which
I also-
may include.
Right,
and objective two, I even think Marshall Park needs to be discussed too, like we had both of those votes.
Well,
What can we do?
what do we discuss on that?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's really the Parks Commission to really decide, and even
Yeah.
Municipal Building Design Committee, you know, kinda decides it too, but they're under us, so I think that's
That's
obviously
different.
much
Yeah.
more our purview. Marshall Park, you know, not so much.
You could
We
take
have
a
a meeting
position.
with the Parks Commission.
Yeah,
you could take a position on Marshall Park.
yeah, and I've been waiting for them to
Which
meet
we
and
did.
seeing what they wanna do.
But I think
But
we
I'm
can also
moving
take a
forward.
position after the vote
Yeah,
and a new select board too.
yeah, of course. But that, I don't wanna commit to that right now, cause I wanna see what the Parks Commission has to say after town meeting
Do we
first.
want, yeah,
I
do we
think they
wanna
need
have
to
a meeting
drive it.
with them? Yeah,
And I don't think it meets
It should
the,
be a goal for us.
the bar, yeah, beyond our goals.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely on our radar,
yeah.
yeah.
I think the municipal building design one does. because
Oh,
that's
for
our
sure.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, we're back at this whole, like, if we don't do something with our buildings, we're gonna,
Yep.
Yeah.
But I do have issues with the existing.
no,
plan.
I understood,
Well,
I'm
of
not
course,
talking about that
yeah.
plan, I just mean in general, we're just, I feel like, yeah. anyway,
Okay,
that's
so I'm
another
gonna reword
conversation.
this, I'm gonna remove 925 Mass Ave, and I'm gonna, replace it with the Brooks House. So determine a, path,
I think they go together.
Mhm.
They're intertwined.
Municipal
Because-
building design.
Yeah,
Yeah, the use of.
oh, the,
We delegated
Yeah.
that to them.
Well,
I'm sorry, are you talking about 925 Mass
No,
Ave?
no,
no.
The
I'm
municipal
talking about-
building.
because I think that there is at least one option that hasn't been explored for the Brooks House that directly relates to the current design of the municipal building design, you know, so
Okay,
Yeah, like the
Okay.
usage of it.
so I wanna remove 925 Mass Ave.
Yes.
Mark. Can I do
Yes.
that?
Yes.
I want number
I think
three
we can
to be number
remove
one.
TC Passios too.
Well, I think we definitely,
That's on the
I don't think we have to,
No.
that town manager can do that.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah,
most
why
part.
not?
That's
So
the
what-
facilities
one of the
director,
things
that's,
that I had hoped to see, and this really is, I guess, town manager and ties in with the town manager, is looking at what we currently have in TCP and then what we're losing and what the end goal looks like. That's just sort of an output of kind of what you're doing already, I guess.
And I
For the
think,
most part,
and I think
the
the end
measure-
goal of TC Passios kind of connects back to the municipal building design committee too, like,
Yep.
what do they do with the buildings? Maybe the users of TC Passios get into the municipal building design future
And
of
even
buildings.
if TCP ends up having the rear portion removed, right,
Mhm.
that's developable land
I
that
know.
might change the
Well, exactly.
conversation around something else, that's a good chunk of land there.
And that, I do think that's the conversation that I'm trying to like capture here, but maybe that's,
This is all also contingent upon moving the funds for the roof over to TCP.
yeah. So maybe we can hold off for now and just focus on that short-term plan.
What did, municipal building design, did they come up with a path forward yet?
They met last Monday. No, I forget.
Thursday.
Yeah, it's been days. But the plan is to meet with the select board
Okay,
to get a path forward. And they basically discussed too, we haven't had our recap meeting, our committee,
yes.
select board to talk about each committee, but they basically said there's two paths forward. There's repeat it in the fall town meeting and go the same path, or take another path and go somewhere else, but that's kind of why we want to talk to the select board.
Right. Alright, so do we wanna remove TC Passios from,
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it can just fit with the municipal building design.
Okay, so then let's rework this one. I just included conducting a survey. I personally think it's helpful. I don't feel strongly about it. I also don't think the select board needs to do that. If the municipal building design committee wants to consider it, I just think it'd be helpful.
I think it can connect back to making the municipal building design do that, right?
Yeah,
If that's what we want them to do.
right.
I would really like to know what were the barriers, like,
Me too.
was there anything that would have gotten people to yes?
I think we heard it
No,
at the
but
town
what-
meeting, but yeah,
no, but
how
what-
would we get to yes?
Yeah, how do you get to yes? So what do
Mhm.
you need to either hear that you didn't hear? You didn't like the plan, you didn't hear enough details about
Mhm.
what the operating costs were. So do you like the plan, you just need more details on it? Or is it something, or do you need a radically different plan?
Right.
So I think we'll
And-
hear that from
yeah.
the
Yeah.
municipal building design committee, like,
Mhm.
they kind of have some of that feedback too.
Oh, okay. Well,
We could do a survey as well.
do you want to include it? Doesn't have to be a goal. We can cut it out from the goals.
I don't mind seeing it.
Yeah. I think it'd be helpful. I do. So I'd like to see it. I'd be interested in that. What about the rest of the language on here? I mean, it's a collaborative effort, so I don't really know how else to word it here.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I just think I would just get rid of that first part and just work collaboratively with the
Okay.
municipal building design.
It captured it, but it also doesn't really say much because, it's collaborative, so. Okay, so work collaboratively with the municipal building design committee to determine how best to address the needs of our municipal buildings post-annual town meeting. How's that? Anything else we want to add? Any other objectives? I mean, it's a big one right there. I don't know if we want to.
Is there anything that you feel, having watched this process play out,
Which process? The municipal
the
building
municipal
design?
Yeah.
building, that you feel as a board, because this is a little bit different of a committee. This is a committee that is not created by bylaw or charter, it's specifically created by vote of the select board. Is there anything that you feel you need to be more, either change their direction or change their charge or be more specific? So that the board, because they're essentially doing work on your behalf.
Mhm.
This
Will
is,
we include an objective of reviewing the
Review the
charge
charge.
of the municipal building design committee?
I mean,
Well, Brian, you've been on the committee since its creation. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it still comes back to what we were talking about at our last meeting of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design is it's either repeat and go to the fall town meeting or it's a new process. And the only new process I see is breaking it up into pieces, doing
Mhm.
capital planning projects of whatever piece. And maybe it's coming up with a prioritized list of these are the things we can hit up. Maybe it gets the price down and then you can try again, or it's all capital planning projects.
capital?
Using capital planning to
No,
renovate.
That
Not that,
exceeds our.
Yes,
it
it
exceeds,
doesn't.
Oh,
Well,
God.
exceeds.
it
Yeah,
exceeds the.
Well, so like
It would
the
be
full cost
borrowing.
of, the full cost, I think it was 2 million for
That would be our entirety of free cash.
the town hall.
Yeah, so that's
On a
a
good
no.
year, for a good year.
Yeah, that's a no for capital, so,
We're
I
just trying to find ways to break it down, but it's not gonna be able to
It's-
do the whole plan.
to speak candidly, outsider somewhat looking in, right, in this process. I feel like that there were some things that could have been benefited by having, when a committee goes off and operates as a committee without a dedicated, either one or several staff elements on that committee, I think that committees can get into trouble. And I think that, I wasn't here to watch the process, but I've heard from the staff. And I don't think that the staff really felt like there was the level of engagement around the design that even they were in support of it.
Yeah, I
And
concur.
to your original question, I think, from the outside, participating in the process, as a mere citizen, watching the process, it seemed like it was much too much, too large a project for the board to simply hand off to 7 people and then just go about all your other business. I mean, it was such a huge undertaking. Part of me as a citizen watching it was felt as though, trying to read the room was like the selectmen were probably like, oh man, really, and people would literally say this, and which was aggravating because it was so much money. That like, well, no one really loves this plan, but we really kind of gotta get, I'm like, if it was $8,000 to $12,000, I'd say absolutely fine, no problem. But that size of a project, it should really be, you know, the goal, which I realize you can't always attain the goals, is to have something that the community is proud of and is looking forward to and is excited for, or at least a good portion of it. You're never gonna get everyone. But I felt that there was not enough, like, skin in the game of the board in telling them like, oh, no, pull it back. And it was one of the things I struggled with, was trying to provide pushback or feedback to both, you know, the select board, the finance committee, as well as the municipal building design committee, is I didn't want to sound critical or offensive or challenge them, because I actually had sympathy for the municipal building design committee. And I felt like I was that guy new to town that was like, you know, because I watched all the meetings and there was all the conversations about the TC Passios 10 or so years ago. And, you know, the problem with people coming in new to this struggle the town has and kind of, you know, knocking it off the rails. So I was mindful of that, but as I was watching it and as I had to boil down to my public comments, you know, once I got to like 19 minutes in a 3-minute comment, I realized I had to just say, there is nothing about this project that I liked. Because that summed it up. And I felt horrible because of the time and commitment, specifically to the Municipal Building Design Committee. But, so back to your original question, I think there needed to be more buy-in. One of the things, I mean, there's many things I liked the school committee did, of course, but you have the subcommittees where, like the policy subcommittee, where 2 members, or, you know, a lack of a quorum could go and get in the nuts and bolts. And I look forward to, you know, having a conversation with Brian about, you know, about the municipal design committee, but I was just traveling and now he's gonna be traveling. So, and I prefer, you know, to the previous conversations about remote, I much prefer an in-person conversation, especially with somebody I don't know. You know, it's tough to have initial conversations, particularly with something so complex, you know, over the phone even, or virtual. So I'm you know, anxious to have, you know, in-person conversation. So I think that, I don't know if that's the answer, but a naive or a rookie, if you will, coming in is like, maybe like the subcommittee to, you know, be more involved in providing guidance to the committee. Because, and that's where I'd be looking for your guys' guidance, is I cherish the importance and the input of committees, because that's, you know, even, you know, bringing us closer to the voter. So I don't want to have the select board intervene so much that they feel like they're not, you know, being effective. So I would have to struggle with that. But using that same analogy, I think it really moves, the more you use committees, the more it removes from the citizens.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly, there was no connection between this, like the feedback. So anyway, I'll stop. I'll keep going down that rabbit hole.
I'm digesting it, I hear you, and it's how not we, but Tom Alonso and Lou Franco did the tax investigation, right? They had like their little group, the 2 of them were really spearheading that. I guess we can consider it. I need to think about it a little more if I think that's like.
Yeah, and
really
I know
the
this,
best
we're
way
working on goals, and that's why I'm trying not to get down the
Yeah,
rabbit
I think
hole.
that's a great discussion to
Yeah.
have at a select board meeting, that we can discuss really the path forward, because it doesn't have to be the same old. And I think the other concern that the Municipal Building Design Committee came up with too is that if it's not the plan that we presented, then if it's gonna be a redo of the model, there's gonna be additional funding that's gonna be needed.
Right, you get to start all
Substantial.
That's
over.
the other concern too.
Substantial.
And that's
Yeah.
really another reason why we have to go back to the select board with that.
Yeah.
And if we,
I think there is money, well, not enough, but there is some ARPA money left
and then
that went to that study.
the other thing is, time is ticking on this
Yes.
one. So this project was time, or these projects were timed to fit in a window before some of the school projects were coming on. And so a 1 to 2 year delay, we might be okay, maybe. If this sucker goes out 3 years, 4 years, forget it, now you're getting on the other side of the schools and we are 20 years out.
Well, that was some of
And
the
these buildings
feedback too
can't
that the
last
public
that
gave.
long. They can't.
They can't,
The
they will
public
not.
gave the feedback that we need to take, some of the public said, you gotta take care of the schools first, so.
And so I
That's the
think
concern,
that
is the school buildings
that's an
right there.
education element,
Yeah.
right? That this was, so that there's a where we failed, right? We failed by not educating that this was timed
It's
in
serious
this sweet
need.
spot, and that now we are putting it out 20 to 25 years, potentially, and we may not last.
And again, not to go down that rabbit hole, but it was, again, being engaged in the process, it was dedication and goal to keep it under 50, cost under 15 million. And it quickly transitioned to, essentially 23 million plus. I mean, it was gonna be more than that, in my opinion. I mean, I know they had a very good contingency of the 25%, so that was very responsible.
Yeah.
But I still had that unnerving thing, like, oh man, it's still, what, I don't know if it was 20% design or whatever, but I wasn't overly confident that it would be that. So it was that gap, that jump from under 15 million to the 23. There was no real good, I wasn't sold on how it got there.
Michael Ray made some really good points at town meeting about how every year, I forget what his
Oh,
exact
yeah.
data point was,
Oh,
but
yeah.
every year that we delay, the
Get so
percentage
much,
yeah.
increase on this, that,
That's true.
I,
But these are good goals for you. I'll be dying to see how you do.
no, this one's
I
on
mean, the
your
TC
list.
Patsy, yes. Yeah,
This one's on your
so
list.
this one- Wait, that's what I've heard.
I don't know what the product is, at the end, like, what makes it
So,
a smart goal too, is
I-
gonna be the challenge.
I think objective one's good. Do we wanna add anything else here?
Do you wanna look at do you wanna do an
Reevaluate
analysis of
the
the charge
charge.
and
Yes.
component?
Yes.
Composition. Composition, thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
Evaluate charge and composition.
yeah.
Alright, so I'll add this as objective 2. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Evaluate the charge of the municipal building design committee, the charge and composition.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm thinking, like, just off the cuff, that, like, the facilities director should
Oh.
be an ad hoc on this.
Yeah,
I mean, like, he should be at every meeting. He's gonna, sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, see,
Well, that
that's
could be
the
a discussion
rub,
of
right?
the
Right,
evaluator of the charge.
but, like, so there's points where finance director should be brought in earlier in the discussion. Like, there's just,
yeah.
So this is, yeah, kind of
Agree.
connecting to my
Agree.
objective, determine with stakeholder input whether revised proposals should be brought forward
Mhm.
at a town meeting or special town meeting, and ensure any proposals are grounded in community supported priorities.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think it's good. I think we capture it, I think, here, right? Do you wanna change anything that we have?
one of the things that didn't happen, that I think is kind of low-hanging fruit, easy to make happen, whether it's through the municipal building design committee or through the select board, is a series of tours,
Oh, absolutely.
to get people
And we
into.
started
I was
talking-
waiting.
Right.
We started talking about that, but it was very late, and I don't actually think it happened.
No, it
Because I wanted to go, because there was
Plans
certain
that
parts that I
happen.
haven't seen that I was interested in seeing.
I
The
think if you-
videos were very helpful.
The
but it
videos were
would've-
very helpful.
Would've been helpful to do that much earlier,
Yeah.
so.
I think if people actually got in and were able to kick the tires on some of the
Yeah.
buildings, I think that they might have somewhat of a different, you drive by and it looks like a historic New England
Yeah,
center.
Yeah. I mean, the whole public engagement needs to be improved.
So I don't know, just a thought, if
do we wanna add an objective about public engagement
I
and
think
doing
it fits with
open
the charge.
houses?
Yeah, I think we,
Yeah,
I
the
think
charge,
we really get detailed in the charge.
yeah, okay.
in the charge for that.
So maybe there's a whole meeting before we meet with them to evaluate the charge.
So we
Or
added,
it's post
we
after
added an
meeting
objective
and coming up with the
to the
charge.
charge and composition. Alright, I think that's solid then, I think that's pretty good. Anything else we wanna add here? Are we just assuming the Brooks House falls into this?
Yeah, it already did, right? It already has gotten
It-
pushed to the municipal building
I know.
design, so
Yeah.
that will go again in our discussion of the charge.
Does it
Okay.
make sense to have, where the municipal building design committee is made up by elements of different boards, committees, commissions, and just
Mhm.
residents at
Yeah,
large,
yeah.
right? For this initial kind of, where do we go? What are we doing? What are we looking at? What's on the table? What's not? does it make sense to bring the entirety of the school committee into that conversation? Rather than just have the one representative of the school committee, because the schools are a critical path here for whether or not, if the school administration is not moving into a building potentially, that changes
That was the
everything, right? So we have a new school committee, just like to your point, this is a new select board, this is a new school committee and a new superintendent. Before we decide to continue on this path or change direction, do we have a conversation, are the other folks interested in continuing on this path?
What
Or-
about addressing it with the tri-board?
Oh,
Maybe they can
Yeah,
have a
well, I
discussion
think the
about it
superintendent
first.
has to be involved.
Yeah,
Could we invite the
Which
superintendent to
she
a tri-board
would, yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's what
Because
happens
then
too.
FinCom is included too.
The
right.
municipal building design committee met several times with the school committee and the superintendent, so I think that there's always those conversations, but
right.
I think it should
With the
be.
whole,
Yeah.
with the whole.
Yeah, oh yeah, Michael Ray would come to the school committee meetings.
No, that's not what she's talking about, yeah, I see.
I'm
I need to think about it, I don't know.
I'm just saying, does it make sense, rather than to have one representative of the select board talking to one representative of the school committee for this initial kind of, which lane are we going?
I think
down?
that's part of the, talk about
Tri-board.
the charge and
Yeah.
composition.
Yeah, I don't think we have to get into that and
Yeah, I don't-
and the goals, but I
Right.
think, yeah, I think it's important.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be hard to squeeze that into the tri-board calendar, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is.
It probably doesn't fit in the tri-board
Yeah.
calendar as it's been drafted.
Yeah.
It would be an additional meeting.
But I think we are thinking, at least the prior select board said, hey, let's have meetings with the school committee periodically, so.
Yeah, and
We have agenda item.
So right now, the cadence of those meetings is scheduled, the cadence.
For the track for
For the tri-board is scheduled that as it's your second meeting of every month. So the cadence is once monthly.
Mhm.
So starting in July to January, so it would have to be an additional, like, they're pretty
Like,
packed.
Alright, so, alright, let's leave it at that for now. Anything else we wanna add under here? Alright, goal number 3, review select board policies and procedures. So these are some that we've identified over time. So review and assist in the finalizing of the draft financial policies. We already talked about that, we don't have to cover that again. Oop, let me adjust the numbers here. Objective 2, review the town's special event policy, make planning and holding community events easier. I don't know if you've read it, it is way too much, it's just way too much. So we really need to look at that. It's painful to go through that process. Objective 3, review the town's appointment, reappointment policy. Few reasons, I think more so than anything, the language is just very confusing.
Mhm.
And there are some parts of the process that we can reevaluate, like getting feedback maybe at some point. You know, there's some things that we can change, but really it's the language that it's just a little convoluted and not easy to follow. We ran into issues with that.
I think we've also run into issues with selectively asking people to come in for interviews. I
Yes,
think we need
we
to
did.
formalize, if we're gonna ask reappointees or new appointees, you know, whoever's coming in for interviews, it needs to be
Mhm.
formal. We shouldn't just say, hey, who wants to interview these people? In my opinion, I think it should be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that happened, and then we invited people in the following week, and they sat in the audience, and then we got to them, and no one on the select board expressed any interest in having them come up to the podium, and we wasted their time, so. All right, and then objective 4, revamp the select board and town manager goal-setting process, and this is a carryover from FY '24.
I didn't think that was needed,
Yeah,
but.
I thought we took that on, no?
We talked about adding it as an objective and not an actual goal, so just add under policies. So
Because we
instead
wanted
of,
to outline the times
The
and
timeline,
and then what it actually looks like.
Well, the town managers is in the contract, right? Your goal setting, isn't it in your
The
contract?
timeline?
Yeah.
Yeah, the timeline's in the contract.
Are you saying in policy it's not?
I don't think we don't have any policies for
We
this.
have no policy.
Yeah.
This is where we started our conversation with
Right.
looking at our goals from last year. And instead of having this be one huge lengthy goal, looking
Mhm.
at it and setting a policy for what this looks like. Because again, I still don't really know what this looks like, other than what we're doing here now as we're,
Mhm. The timeline, but there's also like, what forms do we use? How do we approve the forms that we use in the town manager?
The evaluation
Nothing policy
criteria
about it.
Mhm.
could be in the policy, you know,
Right.
attachment, whatever.
And it also gives us some time to figure out how we want to do it, because none of us have done a town manager evaluation.
So do you wanna say, in addition to goal setting and evaluation
Yeah,
process?
because the evaluation's on here, it's just
Mhm.
goal
Town
setting.
manager goal setting and evaluation process. Okay.
I have two more,
2 more policies?
yeah.
Okay, which ones?
One is to establish a regular schedule for evaluating fees.
Oh,
A policy.
So can we,
a policy for that?
Mm-hmm.
For
Set up a
objective 4?
calendar.
for objective 4, can we say revamp the policy on select board?
Or I'll just say
Or
implement
create
a
or
policy.
implement, yeah, because
Yeah.
revamp, you're saying like you have one?
No, I copied that over from last year. That's the language from last year. So we'll say create a policy for the select board and town manager goal setting and evaluation process. Okay, so then let's go down to objective 5. We're saying that we want to have a policy for the
Review.
periodic review
fee
of
schedule.
fees.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine as a policy. We've been talking about the need to do
Yeah,
that
we
for
need to
over
do
a
that.
year now,
Cost
so,
wise,
yeah.
The other one, I don't, it's actually a bylaw change, so maybe, and it's kind of, it's budget related, so maybe it goes in the first objective, but going back to allowing us to change, to provide postcards with like QR codes and electronic copies of the town warrant, instead of mailing the booklet to every house.
Are we all really set on doing that though? Again, we've never discussed it. I don't know if we want to put that in as a goal.
You could say evaluate,
Yeah,
evaluate the,
Yeah.
Saving measures,
Yeah.
cost efficiency.
so it really would go in the first goal then, I think.
Yeah. Because that was the
And
budget
implement
task
it.
force.
Yeah.
It was a budget task force recommendation.
Create a
And a lot
policy
of
to
towns are moving that
establish
way.
a timeline for the periodic review, sorry, I'm still, of
I always
the
find that people
fee.
would at least look at the postcard
schedule.
as it went into the recycling bin. Because it was a postcard, they didn't have to open it, so
Yeah.
that it, as they were recycling it, so it cost a lot less for that to happen, but they would at least see, oh, town meeting is da-da-da, as they put it in, as opposed to the.
The booklet
So-
that looks like trash.
All right, so let's go back up to the budget and let's look at where we think this could fit in. I don't think it needs to be a tri-board meeting thing.
No, just objective 4.
Objective 2,
For.
yeah, so we'll
Just
just
add.
add it as a separate one. Do we really feel like this rises to the occasion of an objective?
I think it also could tie into the town report. Are we still printing the town report, or is it just
The annual town
The-
report,
the annual town report?
are we required by the $50 fine to print an annual town report?
You're required to have an annual
Yeah,
town
does it
report.
need to be printed?
I don't know, maybe we can review the annual, because annual town report and annual town meeting, the printing and the distribution of those often go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're looking at cost saving measures and or environmental sustainability measures, we could review those two things together.
Yeah, the annual town report is expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger than.
How many of those do we throw away a year?
Yeah, so I'm actually only ordering probably 200 this year because, and we can always order more. Maybe even not, because they weren't done. Usually, people are interested in them right before town meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They have a great value
Yeah.
years later.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
always in them, like
Oh,
looking
yeah.
decades back.
But I'm
But,
not suggesting we get rid of it, I'm just thinking.
It's
review.
very
Electronic version.
electronic version, yeah. I don't know if you're allowed to.
Probably not.
But the consequences thereof are a $50 fine, because I do remember in COVID, we made the intentional decision not to produce an annual town report. But so it's a requirement by statute.
Right.
I know it's a requirement to
But-
print
but-
it, I just don't know if it's a requirement to print it.
Mhm.
We should research it.
Yeah, we can look into it.
But I just, even then,
Mhm.
you can do a hybrid approach where you have it online, but you don't have to mail it to everyone, you don't have to print as many, or,
Right.
you know. I just think we could do, if we're looking
That's
at.
what I'm.
If we're looking
in
at
favor
So we look at
efficiencies on
into
like the warrant, I think I
Mhm.
brought up, another community puts their warrant in like the townwide mailing of their local newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we, there's other things we could consider, and I'm just thinking we could consider those two things hand in
Mhm.
hand.
Mm-hmm. Consider the feasibility of amending, so consider the feasibility, or basically consider and if reasonable, propose the change to the
If
to
the
the-
select board supports it.
to the bylaw,
Propose.
because that one is in the bylaw
Yeah.
Mhm.
for the mailing, and then the other one would be, and to evaluate the printing of an annual town report.
So consider the feasibility and potential benefits.
Or cost efficiencies.
Yeah, cost efficiencies of, providing digital, how do I wanna word this? Of,
Yeah, digital.
yeah, of,
You're talking about which one are you talking about, the mailer or the annual town report?
This is the annual town report, so
Digitizing.
yeah, of digitizing, that's it, yeah. Digitizing the annual
The warrant books will still have to print some,
town.
but we're
Right.
only printing
Right.
the ones that are coming to.
Of digitizing the annual town report and
Yeah, I just think looking at the whole process of the
moving
whole, like where we
towards,
I can tell you quickly.
a,
It's not that long.
and moving towards, postcards, is that really the right word to say?
Alternative
Alternative.
notifications.
Notifications, yeah,
It saves
for
us 3
the
weeks.
town meeting
Right.
warrant.
That's huge.
I'm actually gonna pull up right now, just so folks are aware what the cost was of just that.
Consider the fee, for the warrants, it was like 78,000.
Did you finish that, Caesar?
Yeah, consider the feasibility and cost efficiencies of digitizing the annual town report and moving towards alternative notifications for the town meeting warrant.
Just on towards A.
Me too.
Oh,
Oh, I just.
Oh, there we go.
okay.
It auto-filled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 7,000 or 8,000.
Can we get rid of moving towards and just we're considering the feasibility and cost efficiency of digitizing the annual report and alternative notifications
Sure.
for town meeting? So just get rid of the moving
Mhm.
towards.
Okay.
And we could review it and then we could be like, nope, can't do it. But I
Of
think
course,
at least look
yeah.
at it this
You
way.
can consider it. All right, well, we have gone through all of this. There was one that we really, said we'd put a pin on here for the town manager. Which one was
Onboarding?
it? It was, yeah. So it is goal number 2, employee experience objective number 2. So work with staff to identify weaknesses in the town's orientation and onboarding practices, create an updated orientation materials package and process with a target rollout date of January 1st, 2026. Develop an onboarding program for departments that do not have a formalized program. Begin to outroll onboarding/training as developed with a formalized program developed by June 30th, 2026.
I think right away we need to take the dates out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's not developing the onboarding program, putting in the work to
Yeah,
develop the onboarding
begin to,
program.
yeah.
Yeah, like a begin to.
Begin to develop.
Or, I don't know, meet, or like, I don't know what the work is that's gonna be
I
done.
thought we were putting a pin on this
I
all night.
thought you were.
I
gonna-
thought
Jen was
that
gonna sleep
Yeah,
on it.
no, yeah, that was the,
Rewrite the
yeah,
goals.
exactly,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Jen should
I
come
also
up with a
wanted
language for that
I
one.
also wanted to review the evaluation, whatever
The evaluation,
you had a name for
Instrument.
it.
Yeah, if you can send that to us,
yeah,
that would be
and
great.
so, and really the putting a pin in it is I wanna now bring this back to the people that would have to do this and say, what's the reasonableness?
Yeah, what's the
Okay.
product,
Yeah.
that's gonna get done.
All right, cool. So is there anything else that we want to cover tonight?
On goals?
Now, forgive me for not remembering, but at the beginning of like town meetings, do you give like a state of the union?
No.
What are your thoughts on that? Just like,
Not the time for something like that, because at that point, if we are educating folks, number one, we haven't educated them before they got to town meeting. Number two, they wanna get in and get out.
yeah,
What if it's reading material that they just pick up on the table of the state?
I mean,
I think the school committee is discussing it. I think Dr. Burnham actually is gonna do one before she leaves, but that's kind of so the information's there.
I guess I would need to know more about what, was contained within that. Like, is it, what is our, that's a very broad, like, a
Yeah.
State of the Union address is not, we don't typically do, so this is not typically done in municipal government. There is more discrete conversations around what is the state of our budget, what is the state of our capital, what is our state of our staffing, but to have a comprehensive.
yeah, no, not comprehensive, so not,
Okay.
maybe state of the union's wrong, but exactly what you were just kind of saying. Like, if we were to like, have the opportunity at that point to advise, the voters that these debts are retiring. The articles you have today will fit here and, you know, offset.
Some of this is FinCom, the
Yeah.
education of
And that was a
FinCom.
miss, I think that was,
Yeah.
I think that was a miss at the
Yeah.
last.
But it's just more of like, we're in our, you know, this is our fiscal
Mhm.
policy, this is where we are.
Mhm.
Just a graph saying, you know, if we vote everything at this town meeting, this is what the tax impact will be, this is where the line would be, if we don't, it'll be down here, just like a really snapshot.
Yeah, I think we're always endeavoring to make the materials that are
Mhm.
available at town meeting more comprehensive. The reality of that is that when we are in that crunch, the who is creating those materials very much is me and me alone
Yeah,
at that point.
yeah.
And I do not know that I could commit to you at this
Sure.
point that that's something that's reasonable in the context of all these other things.
Yeah.
Because that's not the finance director, that's me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So-
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure if it fits with the goal
Mm.
that we want, but I like the idea of
I
something.
mean, I think we, always need to be expanding and improving upon the information in a way that makes it easier for town meeting voters to understand what they're voting on and why.
That's why I love the video idea that you were talked about
Yeah.
prior to the
Video.
last meeting.
Yeah.
I'm still a firm believer in people should be involved beforehand, that you shouldn't just show up at
That's-
town meeting
Yeah.
and,
That's not the place to learn.
yeah. I mean, I'm certainly
not that
not.
it's, not that we
It is,
shouldn't,
and
we
that's-
should
Oh, yeah,
be
yeah.
saying
I
it,
mean-
but it's also
Yeah.
just, get involved before town meeting.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like 10-minute type, you know, certainly not going through articles X, Y, and Z, but just, I'm happy with just planting that seed at this
Mhm.
point to, like you said, it doesn't have to be a goal or whatever. But I think, you
Just
know,
having
it-
the information is important.
yeah, it's just, you know, like, it particularly like, if everything here passes today, this is what the, you know,
So one of the things that didn't happen this year, that is baked in, is that the town manager provides a, not a budget,
Forecast?
budget message, a
Yeah.
budget message. And so a budget message can be anywhere between, some of them, they're 2 pages of text, some of them are 20 to 30 pages of text.
Yeah.
And that's done much earlier in the process, but it does, that budget message then lays out kind of those,
Those things.
what's our status on this, what's our status. So
Yeah.
that was absent from the process this year.
This was a weird year.
Yeah, I think that was due within 2 weeks of me walking in the door. So, that said, that now, once that document becomes created, that becomes very easy to extract now the PowerPoint from that document, right?
yeah.
But that's the foundation for that.
Definitely something to consider as we go along.
Yeah.
'Cause I think getting the information out there in an accessible format is always important.
And, you know, it gives you face time with the, you know, literally the engaged voters,
Yeah, the
you
people who
know,
are voting. Yeah.
they get to meet you and.
Yeah, and I mean, that budget, ideally, that budget message is in the book.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
can
yeah,
read
yeah.
it. Yeah, you
But we all know,
Yeah.
It's digital online.
Digital online.
Yeah, a lot of
online.
municipalities have like actual interactive websites going into town meeting too.
So you may be referring to a GFOA budget, which is, they're awesome,
Mm.
but they take about a year and they're like
Oh, I'm sure.
30 grand.
Yeah.
Do you have a GFOA budget, Concord? Of course you do.
No, I don't know what JFOA budget is.
The Government Finance Officers Association budget,
Yeah.
it takes, your budget becomes really maybe a 200, 300 page document that each thing is tied to goals and objectives. So that all of our
Oh, wow.
budgeting and all of our,
I saw an
It's a
actual
very
web
trans-
page that went through all the articles, and it was just a
Oh,
different way to
Concord
like,
was that.
it was a different way to like engage with the material, other than like, you know, just a booklet. It was a little more
Gotcha.
engaging, but I'm not suggesting it, so. All right, anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, you showed me one of those, it's comprehensive. All right, anything else you wanna talk about tonight?
Now, going through, like, poking through the charter and stuff like that, you know, one of my suggestions was gonna poach from one of the other towns is like picking bylaws to go through. Has our bylaw committee been established?
It has been established, I got sworn in, I reminded the other appointees to get sworn in as well. They'll start meeting soon and we'll formulate whatever process that's gonna be and how it's gonna include public input.
Yeah.
Cause I think, there should be some.
So that'll just
whether
fall
it's
into,
public comment.
that just fall into the
Yeah, it'll
category
be-
of work that gets done, but it's not a role.
Yeah, it's not gonna be for us. It'll be part of that periodic review by the review committee.
Could we tell the select board could tell the bylaw committee what bylaws were?
It sounds like they have to go through all of them, right?
Yeah, it's just the combing through all of it, yeah, so. All right, nothing else on goals? All right, so we can pick this up and finalize it at another meeting. All right, no minutes, no warrants, any action items?
Yeah, I have one for the town manager to, look into how much ARPA money is left to be spent this year.
Okay.
If it's not spent by the end of this calendar year, it's lost.
Yeah, so report
It's
on
already been
An updated
appropriated,
report?
so
Yep.
I think I don't think we can move it around, I think that's still up in the air though.
No, well,
No.
so, no, there is some language that came out in a very final, like, last month, of the feds disseminating new guidelines, that there is some level of flexibility, maybe in certain circumstances, but it would be moving it between projects that are already funded, and it's a little convoluted, to be honest. That said, if I could have not, Ezzy is at a training, an accounting training this week, I believe in Cape Cod. So if we could put this over, I don't know that I
Sure.
could turn this around for the
Yeah.
17th, but
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, if we can do it because we're halfway through the year.
Right.
Yeah, yep, we can do that. Any other action items? Did you have one?
No?
Oh,
waiting
yeah,
for
I was
his
just
motion.
trying to
Make a
get-
motion.
Is there a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn at 9:03 PM.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. It's 9:03 PM and the select board is adjourned.